across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. No, it's not morning yet. Good evening to you. This is Petrie here with you, and I do know what time it is, genuinely. Yeah, coming up in the next 3 hours, of course, at midnight, is your chance to talk back. And I've got a kind of left of field phone in for you for midnight, and that is, it's about friendships. Because there's a new sort of TikTok, if you like, a new thing going on that is trending and getting hundreds of thousands of views. And that is that people are now confessing to not having any friends. That was the taboo, that there was a shame around not having friends. But many of us go through lots of different changes in life. I mean, if you were married and you got divorced, chances are you've lost quite a few of your friends. If you're new parents, and maybe in your friendship group, you're the only ones, you will lose your friends. So there's lots of times through our lives where we may find ourselves without friends. And I just wonder if you have found yourself in that position and how that makes you feel. Like I said, it's a huge thing at the moment that a lot of people are now being really honest and open about the fact that they've got no friends, that there is no shame attached to that. There always was, wasn't there? It's always like, who are your mates, who are your friends? So I want to hear from you if you have gone through periods of your life where you have lost friends, and how you, in later life, actually replace them. How do you make friends in later life? Like I said, there's absolutely no shame to this, but it is just a fascinating phenomenon that is now gaining traction. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people now are taking to social media to admit that they have no friends. And actually, many of them are saying, friendship, a friendless life is peaceful and blissful. So I'd like to hear from you. Do you have a close-knit circle of friends that you couldn't live without? Do you have just one friend that is that go-to person that means everything to you? Do you have no friends at all, but you're absolutely fine with that? And like I said, maybe you've been through divorce or something has happened in your life where your friends have just gone away, just fallen by the wayside. Like I said, many people who are new parents will find a lot of friends just disappear. They just suddenly don't want to be around you when you're dealing with kids and nappies, or even on the phone calls. I remember, you know, you used to phone a friend of mine who had a young kid, and it was like every 2 minutes, it was like, oh, I've just got to go and do this, or I've just got, and I thought, I'm not going to phone you anymore. This is so boring. What is the point? So I'd like to hear from you on this. Give me a call. There'll be more details about the numbers on this a little bit later on. But the final taboo, is it the final taboo to admit to not having friends? And why have you found yourself in that position? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, coming up through the rest of the programme, joining me to talk about the papers is Petrie Hosken, who is my big brother, but also author and journalist, former BBC senior correspondent. So he's going to be in to discuss the story of the day and go through the papers for us. We're going to be chatting to Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent, about Prince William getting tough on royals who don't pay rent, or at least don't pay market share of rent. So I think that's really interesting to see the kind of king that William is going to be. We're also going to be talking about about the Nottingham inquiry. I watched this unfold, the press meeting this morning with the victims' families. It was really heart-wrenching, actually. It was really harrowing, some of the points that they made. And and the fact that they're just not going anywhere. They are absolutely determined they are going to get justice. You know, why is it, they're saying, have heads not rolled? In all of these agencies, every single one of them failed to protect their loved ones. So we'll be talking about that as well. But before we get to those stories, time to turn our attention to the Far East and the Middle East, and a fragile ceasefire very nearly collapsed after Israel and Iran traded direct missile strikes. The escalation began when Lebanon-based Hezbollah fired rockets into northern Israel, triggering Israeli strikes on Beirut, and then Iran retaliated by launching missiles directly at Israel. Today, Iran announced an end to its attacks, but warned of a crushing response if strikes on Lebanon continue. Well, following pressure from the US President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu halted strikes on Iran, but avowed to keep targeting Hezbollah, warning he will respond to any new threats with force. So, is this ceasefire going to hold? And what does this tell you about Iran and Iran being really, really strong against Israel? The words that they're using is sending Tehran makes hell warning if US or Israel makes another mistake. And they're also saying that this break in the ceasefire that has happened is the US has to take responsibility for it. So strong words from Tehran. Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Ross Harrison. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C., and author of a new book, Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy, Strategic Interests, Power and Influence. Good to speak to you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. What do you make of the language coming out of Tehran at the moment?
Well, I think what we're seeing now, Petrie, if we step back from this conflict and look at the structure of how this has been unfolding, we really haven't had a ceasefire. I mean, you basically have had a subsidence of kinetic activity, though there has been back and forth attacks between the U.S. and Iran, and then Iran and the Gulf Arab states. But for the most part, what we've seen is a blockade, which is an act of war itself. So I think that's important to understand. In terms of Iran, specifically, the Iranians are concerned that the United States is in an escalation trap. What do I mean by that? I mean that if Donald Trump escalates escalation could inflict further damage on Iran, but it won't necessarily create capitulation. It won't create a positive strategic effect for the United States. And if he de-escalates, then he's going to be charged with possibly having a worse deal than Barack Obama got in 2015, that Donald Trump walked away from in 2018. So the Iranians see that the United States is kind of in this trap. And what they're concerned about is they're also in a trap because of that. So what they're looking for is an opportunity to break out of that trap. And I think what we're seeing with Lebanon, the launching missiles against Israel sends two signals. One is that you've got to negotiate with Iran, because this status quo, where we are right now, cannot be sustained over the long term. It's risky for everyone, including the United States. And number two, that Hezbollah is part of Iran's axis of resistance, and that they're going to come to the support of their allies. So I think for Iran, it's a designed to put pressure on the White House to actually accelerate negotiations, because these negotiations, Donald Trump every couple of days says we're close to a deal, but you're not close to a deal. So I think that's the strategic thinking on the part of Tehran.
Donald Trump is always saying that conversations are ongoing in Tehran, and that he even picks up the phone. I'm not entirely sure who to. But there is some concern, isn't there, that some of the talks that are going on are at lower levels than Trump would want them to be, and therefore, in a sense, can't be believed, that the talks that are happening really don't amount to what Trump is saying they amount to.
Well, remember, Petrie, that just a month or so ago, there were talks, and they were very high-level talks. There was the Speaker of the Parliament, Ghalibaf, and the Foreign Minister, Al-Ghashi of Iran, and the Vice President of the United States, and the two negotiators, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. So they were at a very, very high level. Unfortunately, the message that was being communicated from the United States during those talks was basically that Iran needs to capitulate, and they didn't go anywhere. So I think what we're seeing, Petrie, is not so much the level. It's not necessarily they're happening at a low level. I think what's happening, what you're seeing is they're indirect. And indirect talks where either through the Qataris or through the Pakistanis or through the Egyptians, they can get you to the table. But if you're going to make any kind of progress, the parties have to meet, and they can't just meet in a performative way, which is what we saw in Islamabad in the last round with the vice president, with Ghalibaf. They were pretty much performative talks. They need to actually get in a room and agree not to leave the room, at least until there's a framework agreement established and agreed to, or at least a statement of principles. And that we have not seen. So I don't think it's the low level. I don't think Donald Trump is talking to anybody in Iran directly. I doubt that. But I think it's not the level. I think it's the intensity. Diplomacy requires a very, very strong and sustained commitment. And I think it's also the fact that there also have been indirect. There have been very few direct talks between the Americans and the Iranians.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump said just last week that he was bored because it's getting it's fine. He finds it boring. I guess because there's a lot of talking that has to be done, and there's a lot of minutiae that has to be ironed out, and we know that he doesn't have that sort of patience.
Well, I think the boredom. First of all, it's a very insensitive language to use because people are suffering. If not in the United States, they're suffering in Iran. They're suffering in the global South. Fertilizer's not getting good. So, I mean, it's a callous kind of a statement. But I think going back to your original question about what's happening in terms of what happened in terms of the calculus of Iran, in terms of launching missiles against Israel and then Israel's response, is that breaking out of that boredom. I think what the Iranians are seeing is the United States is kind of stuck in this no war, no peace dynamic. And they're determined to break out of that, because if this continues, then their biggest concern is not a return to war. That's not their biggest concern. That is a concern. Their biggest concern is that the situation sustained itself. The people do work, the countries do workarounds around the Strait of Hormuz, and basically Iran loses its deterrence. And they're determined at the end of this conflict that they will have regained deterrence that they believe they had lost before this war. So what you're seeing is a desire to break out of the status quo, turn a frozen kind of a situation either directed towards negotiations or towards an escalation. And frankly, kinetic escalation is a form of bargaining itself. So either go to the battlefield or go to the negotiating table. Just sitting tight is not sustainable for anybody. But I think for the Iranians, they're afraid if they continue with that, there will be no. It will lead to a degradation of their deterrence. I
mean, a couple of things on that point is that the Congress have now stepped in with Donald Trump. I know that they've got to go a bit further, and it's likely that it will fail, and Donald Trump will get permission. But at the moment, Iran is looking at America and saying, well, look, there is no appetite to start fighting again, and Donald Trump has got the midterms coming up. So if we just wait him out, do they believe they will have a stronger bargaining chip, or do they not really pay attention to that sort of thing?
I think they pay attention to it, but I think Petrie, I think there's so many conflicting messages and so much uncertainty in terms of what pressures weigh on Donald Trump and how he makes his decisions, that I don't think they're banking on having the Crimea. If the idea is to wait him out, I think they pay the price. So I think they do have time on their side.
But Trump also pays the price, doesn't he? Because everybody in America is paying the price of fuel.
Well, but we don't know how that weighs on him at this point in time. You know, we're in an authoritarian moment in the United States. We really don't know that. So I think banking on that in a normal situation with a normal president, I think that might be a pressure. So I think for the Iranians, they paid the highest price, and they're willing to pay a higher cost, provided this war ends on their terms, not just on Donald Trump's terms.
One of those terms, again, I can't help but notice the language from Tehran, claiming sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, I would find it very difficult to expect Iran to give up the Strait of Hormuz. Now they know what they can achieve by that stranglehold and even charging people. Is that going to be a real issue in these peace talks, if you like, that they're going to say, no, we quite like running the Strait of Hormuz now?
Well, I think that probably won't be the first order of business. And the first order of business will be to de-escalate and eliminate the blockade, and then get Iran to open up the strait. I think the conditions under which Iran manages the strait going forward may or may not come up in this first round of talks. But I think what's important to say, Petrie, about this is that Iran, regardless of what happens, Iran now has the Strait of Hormuz as a leverage point. Yeah. They have inflicted damage on the global economy. So they can do that, not without cost, but they've demonstrated they can do that almost at any time. So do they need to manage the strait and impose fees or tolls? That remains to be seen. Remember, the Iranians at the end of this conflict are going to require a financial lifeline, whether that comes through sanctions relief, unfrozen assets, investment from Europe, China, or a toll structure. We don't know. I think what the Iranians are signaling is that they're not going to depend upon any decision that Donald Trump makes to unfreeze assets in order to create an economic lifeline. They have the ability to do that. Now, will they do that? That depends upon the negotiations. It also depends on the appetite, what other costs they would pay. If the Europeans start, if they start showing or portraying Iran as a rogue actor, holding the global economy hostage, and China then intervenes, I think the Iranians, are smart enough, possibly, to manage through that and not necessarily hold the global economy hostage. But I think what they've done is they've shown they can do that, and they can do it again
whenever they want,
at any time. And that is the ultimate leverage. That's the atomic weapon that they ultimately have over the global economy.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, again, the language coming from Tehran is that they don't care a damn about the EU now imposing further sanctions on Iran. They're going, do what you like, we don't care.
Well, they can. I mean, they've cared before. Remember, when Donald Trump walked away from the nuclear deal in 2018, why did Iran stay in the deal? They stayed in the deal for another year and a half, because they believed the Europeans would invest and do their part. The Europeans couldn't because of the secondary sanctions that were imposed by the United States. And so they kind of wrote the Europeans off. And then last fall, like when I was meeting with the Iranian president in New York on the sidelines of the General Assembly, the Europeans basically issued or triggered snapback sanctions against Iran, even though it was the United States that walked away from the nuclear deal. So I think it's not so much they've written the Europeans off. I think in some ways they might believe that given the damage that Donald Trump has done to the European Union, to the U.S. Atlantic Alliance with the European Union, I think they may actually find a diplomatic path to the Europeans. But right now, they're certainly not relying on the Europeans in terms of having any kind of strategic impact at this point. Maybe later on, maybe down the road.
And I know it's really almost impossible to get any information out of Iran at the moment. But have you spoken to anybody? Do you know what the mood is like for the people there? Because we talk the war all the time, but forget about the people who are suffering.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, it's important to focus on the people. I was in Doha, and until a couple of weeks ago, covering the war with Al Jazeera for several weeks. So I met with many Iranians that were coming through Qatar, and yes, people are suffering. I think what we're seeing, Petrie, which is a really interesting twist to consider, is that before this conflict, before the war, the regime had lost domestic support for the most part. We saw that through the protests and then the repressive suppression of the protests, deadly suppression of the protests. And the regime had lost control of its foreign policy. It had lost deterrence. Through this war and the fact that the United States and Israel have attacked not just the regime, they've attacked infrastructure, they've attacked schools, not necessarily intentionally, but they've been many civilian casualties. I think you've seen a bit of a nationalist response, and not that there's a lot of support for the regime, but I think at the end of this conflict, I think that there's an opportunity perhaps for this regime that may have been on its last legs to establish a new social contract with the Iranian people, not necessarily free political expression, but perhaps culturally free. In fact, it's been it's been liberating over the cultural restraints have been liberated over the last several months anyway. But so I think you might see a different relationship than we've seen before between the people you mentioned and the Islamic Republic itself, the regime, because they have a new leadership. And there is, whenever there's a new leadership, and after war changes everything. The last war that defined Iran's foreign policy and its relationship with its people was the Iran-Iraq War. That sort of set Iran on the path it's on now. This war will have a similar impact. It will change Iran's foreign policy, for better, for worse, we don't know. And it will change the relationship between the regime and the people. We hope for the better. My hunch is this regime wants to survive. This is a new lease on life for the regime. So my hunch is there is possibly a silver lining. It's very dangerous in my business to be an optimist when it comes to the Middle East. But yeah. I want to end it with a little silver lining, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Just briefly, because I know I've got to let you go, but the Ayatollah, the new Ayatollah, is there any more information on him? I mean, Trump keeps telling us he's badly injured and has lost limbs, and I mean, we don't know. Is there any more information on him? We certainly haven't seen him.
I heard reports. Yeah, I heard reports when I was in Doha. You know, I heard reports that he had been injured, but not mortally injured, and he was recovering. Remember, you know, there was a eliminationist strategy on the part of the Israelis and the Americans to take out the regime. So the fact that he's in hiding and we haven't seen him is no surprise. I mean, whether that signals a security because of security or because of his recovery, we just don't know. I think what's important to say is that it took Ali Khamenei, his father, the former supreme leader, arguably 10 years to seat himself and be able to wield the kind of power that he did over the last 37 years. And Moshtaba Khamenei, who would not have become supreme leader, I'm sure, had the succession process taken place normally, he will probably make his mark. But I think what we're seeing in Tehran, which is for the first time, you're seeing much more of a consensus-style governing. And before that, under Ali Khamenei, it wasn't really a consensus-style system. It was different centers of power, and then Ali Khamenei would come and adjudicate between those centers of power. What you're seeing is a committee that comes together and makes quick decisions during wartime, and we'll see whether that continues after the war. That remains to be seen. But it's a very different kind of political system that Moshtaba Khamenei heads than his father did.
It's completely fascinating to me, and it always is talking to you, Ross. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Harrison there, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. and author of the new book, Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy, Strategic Interests, Power and Influence. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And coming up at midnight, of course, we have our phone-in. It's our Talk Back hour, which is where you get to do the talking, and I get to do the listening. So I'd like you to consider this as a question, really. How was your friendship group Do you have a friendship group? Because there's a new trend on social media that where people are confessing to not having any friends, and they're saying there's no shame in that. There's nothing. I just don't have any friends, and that can be for a myriad of reasons, right? Maybe you're antisocial. I'm a bit antisocial. Maybe you have been through a divorce and the friends all went one way and not the other. Maybe I don't know. You've had an illness and people tend to shy away from that, don't they? They walk away as soon as you're ill or you've had a bereavement. People are just rubbish at that sort of thing. So have you lost your friends? Did you ever have friends? And is it sort of still embarrassing to admit that? I don't think it is. I don't think it is, because I think that sometimes being without people bothering you all the time must be quite nice, and just being without friends doesn't make you lonely either. Being alone doesn't make you lonely. So I just want to know if you have had friends and lost them, or you desperately wish you had friends, or you had to rebuild your friendship group after something happened, and how did you go about doing that? And do you see the value in that friendship group? Give me a call if you've got really tight friends, really good people. Maybe you've just got one friend and that's all you need. And I was certainly like that at school. I mean, I had lots of mates, but my best friend, who, by the way, we're still friends all these years later, was all I really needed. I'm very much a one-on-one person, actually. I'm not good in groups, in big groups of people. As one of my best mates will tell you, he always says to me, "You're rubbish in company. I hate it when I have to go to a party with you because you are awful." So there you go. That's from him. And he always says that I'm absolutely horrendous. He hates it. He finds me embarrassing because I just sink into the background. I'm not that person that pushes forward. Do you have friends? Do you want friends? Have you lost friends? And where does that leave you right now? 0344 499 1000. Do give me a call. But I've just got something to tell you, which is quite interesting, actually. I saw people drinking this in the office last week. I didn't get offered a bottle. But anyway, talkSPORT have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the World Cup, and everybody said it was delicious. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer or settling in for an afternoon with your mates, make sure you check out talksport.com /so good to find your nearest I sound like I've been drinking it, at your nearest pub. So good. 18 plus, of course, and please drink responsibly, as everybody was doing in the office, I can promise you. Right, quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. Just a reminder that we're going to be talking to Rupert Bell in about 10-15 minutes time, and then Andrew Hosken will be here in the studio to go through the papers. In the meantime, the public inquiry into the June 2023 Nottingham attacks has finished hearing evidence after listening to the testimony of 164 witnesses. Valdo Callacane stabbed and killed university students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar and a caretaker, Ian Coates. The investigation revealed that police and mental health teams missed several clear warning signs before the tragedy. Grieving families called the errors a catastrophic collapse of responsibility and are now demanding urgent, widespread reforms ahead of the final report, set to be published next year. But they said just because the statement won't be published until next year doesn't mean that there should be inaction. And also they want a meeting with the Prime Minister. They are not happy with the outcome of this and the fact that nobody's head has rolled in terms of the way that they say they were let down. They've been very strong on this and saying that it failed at every opportunity, that every single layer failed catastrophically in order for this to happen. They're also not happy about Valdo Callacane not going to trial and being held in a hospital for an indeterminate amount of time. They said that is not justice being done. Well, here to discuss this further with me is Marcus Johnston, who is a Managing Director at PCD Solicitors. Marcus, good to talk to you again. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening.
It was quite harrowing to watch the press conference this morning, wasn't it? And the response of the loved ones saying we just feel completely let down by the entire system, and that includes the inquiry and what's happened since.
It is. It's harrowing, and it's almost going through a double punishment for the families that are left behind, and even for the victims that survived the attack, a number of severely injured people. There is an aspect of this that keeps cropping up time and time again. We have on one part how defendants are dealt with in the court system and whether justice is actually achieved for victims. But then we also have, seemingly increasingly over the years, a wider aspect of what's gone wrong with the system. And that's something which, I see on a first-hand basis time and time again, and over the years, it has got worse. There's no doubt about it. And as we've seen in this case, although this is wider because it involves social services, the NHS, the council, the university, really everybody, the mental health teams, everybody that's been involved with this individual has seemingly failed in their duties and their responsibilities. Now, I see it on a regular basis with other cases, perhaps not involving to the same extent mental health concerns, but you've got failings with the criminal justice system, with the police, with probation, with the court system. Almost everybody that's involved in this, the system is slowly grinding to a halt. So it doesn't surprise me that families and people are let down. It's happening on a regular basis now, and we've seen this here now, what appears to be from this report and what we've heard about things, that seems the way this has gone as well.
And it's interesting, though. I really felt the determination from all of them, actually, although Barnaby Webber's mother is a very good public speaker, right? So she tends to grab quite a lot of attention. But there was an overwhelming sense that they will not accept lessons will be learned, that there is no acceptance whatsoever of the status quo of usually these inquiries that are just churned out saying, oh yeah, we're going to learn lessons from this. They are not going to settle for that. They want heads to roll. They're asking why people have not been examined by the medical board, why people have still got their jobs, why people were allowed to retire early in order to not have to deal with the outcome of their actions. They will not just settle.
Well, Petra, this is something which we've seen time and time and time again over many, many years. How many times? You must have interviewed so many people over the years, politicians who will say, we're going to learn lessons from.
Do you know, it's the one phrase that I get so angry about.
And it's the same. It makes me feel enraged whenever I hear that. And it's gone on for years. but nothing ever changes.
Nothing.
Wait for the next catastrophe, and then there's more lessons to be learned, and nothing ever happens. And nothing is happening because we're fighting a system that is completely broken. Unless the government's going to invest money and train people properly in all aspects of the system, it's going to get worse. So these days, it's all about cost cutting. It's everything goes out and to the lowest possible tender. Whoever can do it the cheapest gets the contract. And cheap is not necessarily the best. It very rarely is. And so when you're dealing with the justice system or the healthcare system, the mental health system, if you're trying to do things on the cheap, it's going to end in a disaster. And that's exactly what we've seen here.
We also saw, didn't we, that Valdo Callicane avoided a trial. And certainly the family are not happy with that. They want a trial. They want him. There were many comments today in that press conference saying, look, he knew what he was doing. He targeted these people. He knew what he was doing, although he has been diagnosed with a schizophrenic disorder. But there's no legal platform for the families to change Callicane's sentence. But that's exactly what they want to do, isn't it?
That seems what they do want to do, but it were very difficult without a change in the law.
Yeah.
But I have a great deal of sympathy with what Emma Webber has actually said. She's talked about Callicane getting away with murder. She talks about no proper trial, no proper punishment, that he knew entirely what he was doing, that he avoided accountability through his own manipulation and legal technicalities. There's a number of phrases there, and I do have a great deal of sympathy and empathy with what she's saying. I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, but I can understand fully what she is saying there, that yes, there was no proper trial because the prosecution accepted manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, so it leads to a trial for murder. So in a way, yes, there is no trial and evidence cannot be tested because it's been accepted. Now, whether that was the correct thing to do by the prosecution service, again, that's something which I know the families would say, no, they haven't dealt with it properly. That needs investigating. There are legal technicalities involved here, and this is something we see more and more in law. And with defence strategy, it's often the case of trying to take advantage of the prosecution service. Now, equally, it could be said the prosecution tries to take advantage of the defence position, but that's the adversarial system that we have in law in this country, in the UK. But when you've got the defence who have to put forward some evidence of diminished responsibility, but it only has to be done on the balance of probabilities.
Yeah.
And they have to show that perhaps through expert evidence. And I know from working with experts many cases over the years, that if you look long and hard enough, and if somebody has deep enough pockets to pay for expert reports, you can generally find any expert that will say pretty much anything that you want to say. And so if you've got defendants who have got resources, who can find experts, they're often not counted properly, in my view, by the prosecution service. The prosecution service have been too quick in a number of cases to throw the towel in, to say, OK, we'll accept that deal.
They want to expedite, don't they? They want a quick result as well. Let's not forget that. An admission to manslaughter with diminished responsibilities, case done. That's it, gone. But my understanding as well is that the families are saying that even that should be re-examined. The fact that evidence was taken so quickly, that evidence there wasn't any pressure on it. There wasn't any questioning it. It was just accepted, and they want that re-examined as well. Could they at least get that done if they can't get him to a trial?
It's difficult because once there has been acceptance by the prosecution service of manslaughter on the basis of diminished responsibility, it's difficult then to go back to court and try somebody all over again for something on the same facts. It's very, very difficult to do, I think, without some kind of change in the law.
Really?
It comes down to somebody in the CPS has made that decision to accept the plea for diminished responsibility. Now, that might have been the wrong decision, but that would be a criticism of the whichever CPS lawyer made that decision. I think it'd be extremely difficult to go back and say, okay, we're now going to try him again. I mean, it has already been referred to the Court of Appeal as to whether the sentence was unduly lenient, whether it was wrong, and the Court of Appeal upheld the judge's original sentence. However, what we don't know yet is what information was before the judge. We, for example, that there was orders, MG60 as it's called, Schedule of Sensitive Unused Material. So there was material that was not disclosed to the defence. And I think that's come out in a report. I think one of the MPs has raised that with the DPP as to why things apparently were hidden from the defence. Now, that does happen. On almost all the cases I deal with, there will be schedules of unused material that the prosecution will supply to us, and that might list items that they don't want to hand over. However, in some cases, and what's happened here in Valacane case, is they've supplied a schedule of sensitive unused material, which goes from the police to the prosecution service, but bypasses the defence. So the defence have no knowledge of that. And within that was one of the reports, which appears to be one of the reports written by a detective constable, which benefits the defence, which says that, hang on a minute, Valacane knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Made that calculated decision. That was hidden. And I think that's a major problem for the credibility of the prosecution service.
Does that not add any leverage to reopening something if you can say that this is really pertinent information that the defence didn't get?
I think it's a stronger argument. If there's new information that comes to light that wasn't seen before, then that is something that's more relevant. So I agree with that. So if there are instances like this where there's perhaps documentation evidence that was not handed over, that was kept quiet, and perhaps the judge was not aware of that either, then that could be a more important factor in deciding should this be reviewed again. But I do think it would be extremely difficult without a change in the law. And I know that's what the families seem to be pushing for.
They, like I said at the beginning, they're not, Marcus, that they're not going to rest with just the usual lessons will be learned. What processes are available to them to see some justice, some heads roll, in their words?
I think it goes away from the actual court case itself with Calacane. Yes, they will be unhappy with the fact that he's avoided a murder conviction. He's not gone to prison for life. He's detained in a mental hospital until at some stage he's determined fit and safe to be released. So they're not happy with that. But it does seem that there has been a lot of failures with other organisations. You know, we do know that there's been quite appalling behaviour by a number of police officers. A number of officers that have accessed case files relating to this have sent out messages and WhatsApp messages talking about the murder in quite horrific language. Now, I don't personally think that those officers should be in the force. And there's a number of people that are in various organisations, government organisations, that shouldn't be in those organisations. They should not be working there. They have no interest in doing their jobs properly. This is something that I'm seeing on a regular basis, not just the police, not just social workers, probation officers. We're seeing more and more people coming in that just regard it as a job. It's not a vocation. It's not a career. It's just a job. And they don't have any real devotion to that career. And they're not really interested. And salaries are going lower and lower. It's difficult to recruit people. And this is causing a problem for the system. It's something that I'm seeing on a regular basis. But when we add to that, and I think there has been some concerns here again raised with Calacane's background, his ethnicity, and whether that's had an impact on how he's been treated. Again, it's something that does come into the way we are working these days. As a society, we're seeing more immigrants immigration issues arising, language, cultures, differences, and that is affecting how people are when they're in the UK, whether they've been here a few months or many years, or whether parents came to the UK. It's how they integrate, how they settle.
Yeah.
It's how it's affecting them. It's something that I am seeing in courts on a regular basis, where there certainly is an increasing number of very serious crimes being committed by foreign nationals. I'm contacted probably most days with people who have been accused of very serious offences, who were not in this country a few years ago. And that's a new problem that we're seeing.
Yeah. And it's the way they're handled, isn't it, as we saw just the other week. Good to talk to you, Marcus. Thank you very much indeed. Marcus Johnson there, who's a Managing Director of PCD Solicitors. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Talk, and it is Petrie. Just a reminder that Andrew Hosken will be joining us at the top of the hour. Prince William is attempting to draw a line under the past with his plan to cut off rent-free royals when he takes the throne. That's according to royal experts. William is reportedly considered barring royal properties from being sublet, as well as stopping non-working royals from enjoying rent-free accommodation. A source close to the Prince of Wales told the Sunday Times he wants to do things differently after the public outrage that followed the National Audit Office report into royal property arrangements. And here to discuss this and other royal stories is Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Rupert, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. So an indication that William is going to be a bit tougher, it seems.
Yes, and bearing in mind, let's start from the fact that it's been revealed that he pays over £300,000, according to this report, for his property at Forest Lodge on an annual basis. So I think what he wants to try and do is, because of the PR perception of this whole thing, should the royal family be seen, and particularly non-working royals, seen to be in sort of grace and favour apartments. And I think he thinks that maybe this is not such a good look. Now, and I think with particular reference to Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, obviously the daughters of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and they are living in apartments. They pay, I think, about 60 to 70% of what would normally be a normal rental arrangement, with the palace and people citing because of sort of security clearance needed. So there's a sort of limited number of people who can be in there. But I think William is mindful that why should the royal family be seen to be doing things differently than what would be happening in a normal conversional environment? Of course, there are security considerations, but with Beatrice and Eugenie, it's a far more difficult proposition because of the fallout from Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. So I think William is very much his own man, and I think he wants to be seen to be doing the right thing. And this rental setup does look at times, probably to the outside world, a little bit cozy.
Well, it does a bit, because when you consider that both Beatrice and Eugenie are married to wealthy men, you know, there's no shortage of money for them to pay their own way. It just sticks in the craw a bit.
Yeah, and they're also, exactly, and they are working, not working royals, but they have jobs in the private environment.
Yeah, so they're getting paid as well.
So therefore, I think that's where it comes from. Now, I understand the sort of people who can rent these apartments need to be security vetted. But if it looks a little bit cozy for Beatrice and Eugenie, I think given everything that's the fallout from Andrew and Sarah Ferguson and the links with Epstein, it all looks, and the king is paying their rent, then you ask why? And I think that is the issue. And I think William is saying we have got to be squeaky clean. And yes, all this has come out. What do you say about some of the older members of the royal family who are living in these sort of cheaper rental arrangements? Well, maybe you could say, okay, we've got to draw the line somewhere. They've been there for some time. That's it. But going forward, I think William will not be sanctioning these kind of arrangements, particularly when he becomes king. And maybe he might be exerting a little pressure on his father to quietly say, we need to make sure we've got our PR right in this. And this is a PR perception.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is important for the royal family going forward.
But also, I mean, it's been revealed, isn't it, that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, although himself paying a peppercorn rent, was making money from renting royal properties. He made 180,000 a year. Is that right?
Well, that's what they say. From his properties at Royal Lodge. But if you go back originally, yes, he was paying peppercorn rent, but he did pay a lump sum for this property, which was in lieu of him then paying rent going forward. It was like a sort of one, you know, a clear arrangement, right, whatever it was. I think it may have been 7.5 million, and then that gives him a peppercorn rent going forward. So it was almost like, I give you this now, and then everything else is I don't pay anything going forward. That, I think, was the terms of the arrangement. So if you look on an annual basis, you say, well, yes, of course, he's paying a peppercorn rent, but he gets that. But originally there was he had a lump sum that was almost like a clean break arrangement for him to manage the Royal Lodge property. But obviously going forward, what's been revealed now is that Andrew, obviously, given his situation, obviously the links with Epstein, it looks a bit more complicated. But that would have been the terms at the time, which you can say, well, they agreed to it. It was all supposed to be above board. Was it wrong? Maybe. But at the time, it was deemed to be what the royal family felt they could deal with at the time. And it might felt a bit cozy. And that, I think, is where William is coming from. We have to stop these cosy deals.
Let's turn our attention now to there was a royal wedding. Well, he's not a prince, is he? It's difficult to explain. Peter Phillips got married at the weekend to a nurse, an NHS nurse.
Yes, he did. Harriet Spurling, his second marriage. And of course, it's one of those sort of, wasn't the big sort of royal wedding, but of course, it was the second marriage for both of them. So but all the royal family turned out. The king and queen turned up, then hot-footed to the Derby where I was at on Saturday afternoon. So he took a sort of 50-minute helicopter journey to get to the Derby. And yes, it's all looked lovely seeing the royals out in force. But we also saw, in a very staged, managed walk, you have to say, Beatrice and Eugenie walking in towards where the front of the church, and a long walk, while most of the other members of the royal family seem to be just dropped off by cars. So I don't know what the optics that was going on there. It felt like a bit PR staged, but obviously for Beatrice and Eugenie, they were being embraced by the regular members of the royal family, and there is a degree of affection for them. They are often sort of seen as being in the fallout, and they are maybe the royal family feel maybe they're being unfairly vilified for obviously their mum and dad's actions in their relationship with the Epsteins. Although at times you have to say they allowed it, never questioned it. So it was all a bit complicated. But again, they were seen very, as they say, that walk to the church. But for Peter Phillips, grandson, obviously, of the Queen, a big moment for him. And, I know him, and he's a very down-to-earth kind of guy, and I hope he had a lovely day with Harriet, and I'm sure he did with all the family. The King turned up for the church service, and then, as I say, took the helicopter to fulfill his duties as the patron of the Jockey Club and present a trophy to the Epsom Derby winner.
It was interesting you talk about Eugenie and Beatrice there and the fallout from their father, but there's always been a bit of a frosty relationship, hasn't there, between Catherine and the girls, who sided with Meghan on Mexit. So we didn't see... we saw William approach one of the girls and give her a kiss on the cheek, but we didn't see Catherine do the same.
Well, yes, I know, but I think things have moved on a little bit, because I think in many ways, even Beatrice and Eugenie were always seen as sort of Harry's mates. But even now, I think their friendship is being tested, given what Harry has done in terms of his continual dissing of the regular members of the royal family. And I think everything with Catherine is very carefully staged, managed. And even though the press were there, let's be honest, it was all pretty controlled. You saw them arrive. It was a pretty wild and wet summer's day. Get in, go into the church. We didn't see the church, and then we saw Peter and Harriet coming out at the end. I think the interesting thing about Beatrice and Eugenie, look, if they end up being in the royal procession at Royal Ascot, that will be a very interesting dynamic, because what you're saying is then the royal family, the King and the Queen, still value their association as family members. However, I don't think that will happen, because I think that might be a step too far from a PR perspective.
Oh, we'll wait and see, Rupert. We'll talk then. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. The fabulous Rupert Bell there, Talk's royal correspondent. Stay where you are. Papers next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you. You are listening to Talk, and coming up at midnight in an hour's time, it's your chance to talk back. And what we're going to be talking about is this new trend on social media, which is gaining hundreds of thousands of follows and likes. And this is when people confess or admit to the fact that they have no friends. The final taboo, many people are calling it, the shame that normally goes with saying, I don't have any friends, I just don't have friends. And it's a really interesting, this is ahead of Loneliness Awareness Week, and actually I don't think the two things mean the same thing. I don't think being friendless and being lonely is necessarily the same thing. I think a lot of people enjoy their own company and they enjoy being on their own. But I do want to hear from you. It started with somebody putting up on TikTok that I have no friends. And then hundreds of thousands of people sort of connected with that and said, oh my goodness me, I'm the same. I also don't have friends. So I want to know if that has happened to you, how important friends are to you, how important friendships are. And you know, maybe it's because you went through a divorce, or, I mean, looking at young people, the whole COVID situation, if you were getting ready to go to university at that time, that's where you make a lot of your friends that take you through adulthood. I didn't go to university, but, you know, that you didn't get that opportunity. And maybe COVID also cost you friendship groups, because, you know, a few years of not being able to go out and not spending time with people can isolate you. So I just want to kind of figure out when you lost your friends, how you lost your friends. Did you never really have friends? Did you find it difficult to talk about the fact that you don't have friends? Do you feel, I don't know, some form of shame for not having friends? I don't think you should, by the way. But I'm just really interested as to how important friendships are. And maybe you've just got one friend, just that one friend who is everything, right? Just that one mate you don't need anymore. I was certainly like that at school with my best mate, Claire. We weren't friends at school, funnily enough, because we were in different groups. But because they banded in those days. You had A band, B band, C band, I think. Anyway, we weren't in the same band. So I didn't really see her at school, but I had mates at school. But my best friend was my friend away from school, and I didn't really need anybody else. I spent every waking moment with her. So I just, you know, did you just not make friends at school? Did you just not make, how do you actually replace friends as you get a bit older? Because it's very difficult to break into a friendship group, isn't it? If you've lost people through a divorce, or you've lost people through illness, or whatever the situation might be. I'm just really interested to know your journey through friendship. So do give me a call. I'd love to talk to you about this. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, joining me now, not so much a friend, but a brother, but he's also a friend, Petrie Hosken, who is, what's title are we giving you? Author,
former BBC reporter.
Author, journalist,
yeah,
and former BBC senior correspondent. That's what we're saying. Obviously, I'm talking about Claire. Claire Taylor was my best mate at school, and when we were growing up, she was always with me, right? I didn't need anybody else. But friendships, as you get older, are quite difficult to maintain, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's also more difficult when you get older to make new friends. I mean, I joined cricket clubs and cricket teams, and I've made some very good friends playing cricket, even at my age, through doing that. Of all shapes and sizes and classes and all the rest of it. So getting involved in sport, if you can, is a good way of making friends. I've kept friends from school, not very many. From my time as a journalist, I've got some very good friends I've had friends for over 30, 40 years. I'm still in touch with. I see occasionally for a drink, or a cup of coffee and a catch up. So you sort of, and from when I was at the BBC, I made, actually, in hindsight, a few friends, but very good friends, I think.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are sort of fit more into the acquaintance or working colleague kind of class, who you sort of are friendly for a while and then they go off somewhere else or you go off somewhere else. And of course, when I left the BBC, I left a lot of those sort of people behind. But I did keep some very good friends from the BBC. But it is you sometimes have to make a bit of an effort to make friends and keep friends. I think it's not something you can take for granted. And I wonder whether in this new sort of age of social media and people locked onto their phones and all the rest of it, and of course with COVID, a lot of younger people have lost the sort of the enjoyment or lost the sort of the skill of making friends and keeping friends.
And also the momentum as well. I think that COVID did break a lot of momentum with friendships. And it's some friends, I mean, my best friends are the ones that are forgiving if I'm not in touch with them all the time.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Because I'm all of them will tell you that I'm not very good at, I don't need that constant, I must call them, I must do that, and I must do this. I mean, Claire and I have been friends for a lot of years now, and we still message each other, send silly things to each other, and we see each other, and we've been friends for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah, but I remember after school, that friends would write to me, and I would write to my friends. And still some of my best friends from school, after school, when we were at our colleges and all the rest of it, and getting on with life, you would write to each other. You'd write a letter saying what you were up to and all the rest of it. There were no emails in those days.
No, of course not. And
so that was all. When you think about it, and of course, you go back to the Victorian age. A lot of books are actually held together by correspondence between friends and relatives and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's so I think people valued. I don't know whether it's technology which has sort of moved into spaces where friendship should be, or people not, or society breaking down a bit, and people not being able to maintain friendships in the same way that we did or valued them. I don't know. But people obviously change as time goes by. But I can certainly remember sort of writing your screeds of letters. Oh yeah, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah. I had a couple of friends that I would write to.
And so now it's almost so much easier now, isn't it? You drop someone on WhatsApp or
but
a text.
Maybe you're just not putting as much thought into it, maybe. I mean, I remember there was one friend of yours when we were both at school who I really fancied. Was it Robert? Did you have a friend called? I
can't remember.
Oh, I can't remember. I remember being all sort of shy and embarrassed every time you came around to the house. But yeah, I mean, I think that friendships are difficult, and I've recently, sort of in the last 10 years, I say recently, I've had a bit of a clear out as well of people who didn't make me feel good. There's those friends who always go, oh no, how awful, and oh dear, isn't that dreadful? I just don't need people like that in my life.
Yeah.
So I kind of cut out some people that were very negative, but called themselves friends, but almost liked the drama in life rather than true friendship.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that I have been very close to, then I sort of grow apart. I didn't sort of have very much in common with them, and I think that's a natural process, I think, really. And there are people that you don't see for a while and you grow closer to.
Yeah,
so there are friends I haven't seen for years, and then they get in touch, and you become friends with them again, and you've both moved on, you've both at different stages of your life, and you can sort of laugh about the past and sort of have a different kind of friendship.
Yeah.
So friends there are all kinds of friends that we have, aren't there? The closer friends, there's not so close friends. There's a pool of people you sort of see occasionally. And so I think, but it's very sad if people are turning around and saying, look, I haven't got any friends. I think that's tragic.
I think it's a lot of it is a lot of social pressure. I think that a lot of people are, imagine I mean, you've got a son, but when you first got a baby, and you know,
yes.
perhaps other people around you have, and people do drift away because they don't
Yeah.
want to be part of that.
Yeah.
You know,
Having children is a big.
It's a big block.
Because you're all of a sudden your life is devoted to.
Yeah.
To another person, so
and you
you're,
haven't got the time, and you
No.
don't make the time.
No.
And also, even just on phone calls, you know, you'd be like I've got to go, you know.
Absolutely.
And so you
Yeah.
can't devote even a phone call to a friend.
Yeah.
And so people do disappear, but also through divorces or breakups.
Yeah, that's true.
That
That's true.
friends drift into a different camp, or you see the way they treat you, and you don't like the way that they,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you see people in different lights sometimes at different stages
Yeah.
in their life, and you're not in the same context or environment.
Yeah.
And they're not the sort of person you thought they were. Also, I found you know, sort of being sent away all the time when I was a BBC reporter.
Yeah, yeah.
I could never guarantee I was going to be in the country a particular week or particular weekend. So sort of the idea of meeting up with someone for a drink, or meeting up
Yeah, you
or
just couldn't do
committing
it.
yourself to
Yeah.
to being in a cricket team or a football team or
Yeah.
something like that, you couldn't do it. You were sort of considered to be unreliable. In the end, you sort of gave up, tried to keep going.
Yeah.
It was only when I left the BBC in particular where I was able to sort of spend more time sort of investing, you know, more time in my, you know, in my son and my friends and sort of the important things of life that,
absolutely.
you imagine that work and what you're doing is at the particular time is the most important thing, but actually it's not. I mean, I'd spend a third of my life sometimes in hotel rooms. And so, you know,
And
it's very
not as
easy
glamorous
not
as people think.
No,
it
it certainly isn't glamorous at all, and so it's very easy to not keep in contact people, to lose contact people. But it's so important that you do. But I think it does require effort and hard work. I mean, they are your friends, but it's not something you can take for granted.
No,
so I think
you do have to be aware
make the
of their
effort.
needs as well.
You
what,
do, yeah.
What they might
absolutely.
need. I mean, I just remember when I was at the BBC and I was doing an early breakfast show, so I would be up in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was 4 days. That was 4 days a week, and you know, finishing by 10 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember what time the show started, but anyway, I've blocked it out of my brain now. But and people stopped calling me. My friends stopped calling because they didn't know when I was asleep. B, they didn't know when I was awake. C, they knew I was unavailable from Sunday night onwards.
Yes.
So that became that was about 4 years, 4.5 years, and that sort of separated me a lot from friends because I did not have the bandwidth. I was constantly exhausted with those hours, and they were constantly fed up with me not being available. So things change, and it ebbs and flows, and I wasn't able to dedicate any time. Luckily they stuck around, but it can be very, very difficult when your job, like you, takes you away, like mine takes me into a different time zone, and you've got people who are lorry drivers, for example,
Absolutely.
or long-distance workers or overnight workers. It's very difficult if you do a night shift to maintain friendship.
That's why if you can join a club or because sport's a very bonding thing, you know, you can walk onto a sort of cricket pitch with someone and you don't even know them, and then within couple of times that you're bonded, you're friends, and you can laugh about something that happened, and you're all committed to a particular aim of winning a match, and then socially afterwards you might go for a pint or a curry afterwards, and you can make friends quite quickly, and very good friends quite quickly, I find, and I think it's so important. So if people are a bit lonely, I would say, you know, get involved. I know it sounds a bit corny, but yeah, I would certainly
or
recommend
an art class, something like
whatever.
that.
Just get off. Get off your bum and get out there and get into an environment where you're going to meet new people, and you'll be surprised who you'll meet, and and how much value that will give to your
Depends
life.
how socially awkward you are as well. I'm very socially awkward.
Well, I'm sort of not the most sort of outgoing of people. But if
we're both socially awkward.
But not socially awkward as such. But if you're having to play sport with somebody for kicking a ball around,
that's true. It breaks that wall, doesn't it?
Yeah. Or if you're learning a language or something, you know, you're in a language class with someone, you sort of afterwards you go for a pint or whatever, or a coffee, and so things like that can be quite bonding if you haven't got particularly if you're in a new city or something like that.
Yeah.
or a new place or a village.
But a lot of young people, I've got a story here saying that they prefer AI friends.
Well,
a quarter of Gen Z would rather talk to an AI than a real person. 1 in 4 young people would rather talk to AI than speak to a real person. National survey of 2,000 adults between 18 and 29 also found that more than 2/3 of young people would cancel plans in order to spend time online. They are rushing home to talk to their AI.
Yeah, well, I think that's just sad. and I suspect they might just grow out of it. I think dating an AI girlfriend isn't as fun as dating the real thing, in my opinion. I haven't dated an AI girlfriend.
Have you not? You've not tried it? Well, don't knock it.
It doesn't sound like much fun to me. and having an AI mate doesn't sound as much fun either as having an actual friend you can talk to.
Yeah.
But I suspect it's called not being very grown up.
It's very
They all
strange.
sort of grow out of it.
But people
eventually.
saying, as somebody who suffers from anxiety about what people think, ChatGPT helps me feel less crazy. I used to rush home to speak to ChatGPT about feelings from an outgoing or from an outing or towards friends and family to see if my emotions were correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you feel like you're wrong.
Okay.
And is biased to making us feel like we feel good.
Well, I think you can overthink these things.
Yeah,
I think,
it's a very strange thing. It's not. I mean, it's not something our generation would ever.
No.
I think accept as reality. But.
Well, except you did have people who were sort of obsessed with computer games that you would spend all their time in their rooms sort of playing.
Well, I remember the computer game we had as kids, and that was the tennis thing.
Yeah. It was dull as
What was it called?
ditchwater.
It was so bad.
I think it was called computer tennis.
It was so bad.
But you get
We
kids.
did play it though.
Yeah.
We did enjoy it.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
it was
now you've
very
got Super
basic.
Mario Kart and all the rest of it, which kids are. This is also a big problem. I mean, kids get addicted to it, and then they become very antisocial.
That's true.
It's a massive problem for kids in their teens, as we know. But I suspect it's a similar sort of phenomenon, isn't it? With AI and all the rest of it. It's just something else to look at.
Stupid game.
Nothing, another excuse to gawp at a computer screen and not actually engage with humanity.
Engage.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so sad. It really is. And if this is the future, then I don't
think it is. I think people always reach out for each other. I mean,
I hope so.
It's part of being in the human race, isn't it? It's actually quite a lot of fun if you get to know the right friends and share it with them. You know?
Yeah, can be.
That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Right, we've got to take a break, but that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. So do give me a call. Let me know about your friendship groups, about what's going on with you, why it's happened, why it didn't happen for you. Let's just chat. Let's just be friends. Quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me, Petrie Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. We've got a message here from Gary. He said, I always love it when your big brother is on with you. You wouldn't even have to mention who he is because you look so similar. I think I'm much better looking.
Well,
and you need to agree because this is my show. Yeah, not even agreeing now. OK. Andrew, let's have a look at the papers. The Times. This looks like a big story brewing, and we have to be careful legally with this because these are allegations. But David Sullivan, 77 years old, one of Britain's richest men, is facing allegations of sexually exploitive and predatory behaviour from 7 women as a part of a joint investigation by The Times and BBC's Panorama.
That's right. So David Sullivan, 77 years old. He's a billionaire, apparently. He's famously made his money through the porn industry and also being the proprietor of the Daily and Sunday Sport newspapers. Oh. And these allegations focus on him apparently, allegedly, pressurising young women who were models or wanted to be models for the Daily Sport and Sunday Sport, you know, into having sex with him and so on. I think there were 7 women in all so far who gave these allegations or this evidence to BBC and The Times. It has to be said that he's issued a statement saying he's going to sue the BBC for libel. Yeah. I'm not sure what his position is in relation to The Times, but it is, you know, it would be certainly a very big legal action if it happens.
He categorically denies. As he resigned on Saturday, he resigned as the joint chairman of West Ham. Ahead of the investigation, calling the allegations factually incorrect and entirely false. But he remains the club's majority shareholder.
Yeah, so there are obviously serious allegations of, you know, sexual misconduct against Sullivan, who's worth around 1.18 billion pounds. And as I say, he's made most of his money in sort of adult entertainment. So we'll have to see what happens. You know, it's one of those stories you can't really say very much about.
No, without getting sued.
Well, not that. Well, he's issued a denial, and he's saying he's going to sue the BBC for libel. So we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see what happens.
I mean, these libel cases take years sometimes to come to anything, but we'll have to wait and see.
Kemi Badenoch will pledge to overhaul equality laws to stop people getting preferential treatment because of race, religion, gender or sexual orientation.
Yeah, there's echoes of Donald Trump and DEI, isn't there? And his campaign against DEI, which is, you know, diversity, inclusion and equality. And this is about, she's saying that she's going to go after the Equality Act, 2010 Equality Act, which apparently guarantees public sector equality throughout the public sector.
Right.
And so this is her sort of common sense drive, she's calling it. Excuse me, I have just that she's.
Poor Andrew's got a cold.
Yeah, sorry about that. So this is her sort of drive for common sense in public services, and the Equality Act 2010 is in the firing line. So there's a touch of DEI.
Was there to protect people from discrimination based on a list of 9 protected characteristics.
That's correct. Yeah.
It's just to protect them. It's not to advance them. It's not to give them more status. It is just to say if you hold these characteristics, you will be protected from discrimination.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
it doesn't seem that bad to me.
Well, yeah, it's a part of a sort of it's another one of these culture wars. It has a feeling about that, doesn't it? As it was in America.
Yeah, true.
You know, the feeling is, it's the woke left. Using, you know, right-on woke things to sort of, you know, undermine our public services.
Yeah.
What the evidence is for that is hard to say. You know, the Times.
It's more of a feeling than a.
Well, the Times says it's revealed how police forces are, for example, not police forces. Anyway, haven't been police forces for a long time.
No, police
services are spending tens of millions of pounds on DEI initiatives, which have been cast into the spotlight after footage released last week, and then of course the Henry Novak,
which is harrowing.
Which is, again, it's an extremely controversial an allegation to make about that particular tragic incident, that it had anything to do with DEI or two-tier policing. And of course, the family were adamant in politicians not using it as a weapon.
Yeah, so this was not a case of racism.
No, and they've said that. And of course, people like Nigel Farage went against that and have used it in their sort of battle to expose what they feel is an abuse of equality law, to give presumably black and brown people the leg up in public services, which, again, there is no evidence, because, as you say, it is simply there to design to protect people of race, and gender and all the rest of it. So, again, there's a feeling, isn't there, and I think the critics of this of saying that this is sort of politicians using these sorts of pieces of legislation as a sort of part of it to win votes in their sort of endless culture wars.
Yeah.
And again, as we've seen in America, in the army, where they're being used to sack and demote generals.
Yeah.
Very qualified, very experienced people, on the basis of that they've been hired on DEI. So it's become a sort of, a weapon to beat up public services and armed services with at the moment.
Yeah,
I think.
but I mean, it's also, the Equalities Act, so I support that on behalf of women everywhere as well. It's not just about race, is it? It's a gender thing as well. And also about
race, religion, disability, all of that.
And so that they are not discriminated against. And there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that.
I mean, a very good friend of mine at the BBC was discriminated against on grounds of disability on one case and sued the BBC over it. He's now very well known. I mean, he's gone public on it. A very well-known correspondent at the BBC. And he was treated very badly at one stage by the BBC, and that was proved. And he got money from the BBC for it. So this legislation is there to protect people.
Not to elevate a particular...
and there doesn't seem to be any sort of empirical evidence that's been provided to show that this is being used to sort of promote people above their station simply on the grounds that they're on the
Although
grounds
some of the
equality.
police did say that they were told to, was it 5 or 7 officers from that particular police service were saying that we were told to take very seriously any complaints about racism towards people, and they intimated that the training was a little confusing, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that's their job. They're there to protect people. And if people are being attacked as a result of racism, I mean, they have to protect.
But Novak wasn't, was he?
Well, the situation, the Henry Novak case was a case of incompetent policing. I mean, where
really
it appears
poor.
to be where they rocked up at a particular place. The attacker, the assailant, who had stabbed, Henry Novak to death in the end, he's subjected into what turned out to be a fatal injury. Had accused poor Henry Novak of racially insulting him or assaulting him or whatever. In fact, Novak had been stabbed by the assailant, and the police, arrested and then
Cuffed him
handcuffed
and then
him.
took the mick out of him.
But obviously they didn't believe him when he said he'd been stabbed and was suffocated. So it was an
Don't think you have, mate.
It was an act of grotesque incompetence in the end, but there's been no evidence that it was the result of two-tier policing and all the rest of it. Not at all. And the parents have said, quite adamantly that it shouldn't be used by politicians to, put forward that argument. Yeah. So it was just a tragedy, and it's I don't know, it's almost as much a tragedy that it's being used in this way, and it's sort of been casually now dropped into newspaper articles suggest that this is sort of part of, kind of problem that Kemi Badenoch's having to address.
Yeah. Just the way the language changes so quickly around these things. Let's take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is Petrie Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. The Daily Mail has gone with, is university a waste of money? As a shocking study shows that half of debt-ridden graduates earn less than the average wage 5 years after leaving.
Yeah, this is quite. It doesn't surprise me in the way that, you know, you sort of hear so much of this where, you know, people just do not have the same opportunities that we had when we were younger, and how much tougher it is, despite whatever your background is, whether, you know, you're getting on that rung of that you want to get onto. And I was very fortunate immediately to sort of get on to become a journalist and from a young age and sort of never look back. But now it's really tough because, you know, there aren't any newspapers to work for anymore. No local papers. When I started on a local paper, they completely disappeared. They're all sort of on one website now, the Reach website. It's a tragedy. So it says that half of graduates now earn less than the average national wage 5 years after leaving university, and that 150,000 students a year struggle to reach the median full-time worker salary of 35,000. And that, even more worryingly, 11% of graduates fail to land a job that paid them £24,000 over the same period. This is a report by the Policy Exchange think tank. Also found that 57% were in full-time leaving university. And I suspect it'll get even worse with AI. Don't you?
Well, yeah, because all those starter jobs now are being, like in even in solicitors and lawyers' offices and things like that. All of those research, the donkey work, is being done by AI. Accountancy firms as well. It's my phone. Accountancy, it's fell out of my back pocket, sorry. Accountancy firms now, those starter jobs again of sorting through people's accounts, that's all going to AI. So there's a lot of jobs going. Yeah,
and worryingly, you know, it's, for example, a friend of mine's a barrister, and he's saying that, he was telling me the other day that the kind of people who can, you know, they get the law degrees and trained to become barristers, but increasingly the only people who can afford to do that, people are living at home with their mum in Hampstead or whatever, not in Hampstead, I'm sorry, I'm just sort of being a bit cruel, but you know, they're the ones who can afford it because they're being paid a pittance as trainee barristers.
That's
they're being paid, you know, £15,000 a year. I mean, of course, they can earn fantastic salaries later on when they become KCs or QCs, you know, 20 years later. But so it's sort of favouring the sort of kids from well-off families and parents as well.
Well, a lot, to be fair,
particularly in London,
a lot of the sort of arts as well has always favoured well-off families. You know, things, you know, working in art galleries or stuff like that is always favoured because they're very low paid, but you've got, you know, posh families who are able to support that. So I think that is something that is probably going to come back around. Even working in media, you know, having to do a few weeks here and there, you know, at very low rates or not being paid at all to get work experience. And
in fact, the BBC were quite good on that because to stop that happening, they insisted that interns would have to be, you couldn't just be, you know, dad bringing in his whatever. You had to be, you had to apply and applied to become even if an unpaid intern. So that is, but I'm not sure. But so the BBC were very diligent about that, and to be commended for it. But there is that. But it's, you know, particularly in London, it's like, you know, with housing. I mean, you know, you come out of university and you're supposed to stump up a rent for some crummy, you know,
tell me about it,
house share for £1,500 or £2,000. So a lot of these people, young people, are spending more than 2/3 of their income on just living in some, you know...
Yeah, well, so, you know, my son is.
502.
Your nephew is. You know, he's spending, it's £2,000 a month for a one-bedroom flat.
I know. From somebody who's got a mortgage, probably, you know, if they have a mortgage at all, a few £100s a month. It's so the whole thing is upside down. Of course, it's a tragedy when you think about it, because, you know, not so long ago, people were handing on a better world to their kids. Now
we're handing on a worse.
It really is a world where these opportunities are no longer there, and it's so much more hard.
Yeah,
more
the so-called sort of premium, you know, that you would get from going to the university premium is collapsing, and a lot of people deciding not to do that anymore. Zelensky, this is The Guardian, Zelensky takes aim at Reform UK's mistake on Ukrainian flags.
I think Reform has a bit of a problem with Ukraine. And they haven't been, you know, they are noticed. I mean, for example, you know, one thinks about Nathan Gill, who was the Reform leader in Wales,
who was in the
being
pocket
jailed
of the
for 10.5 years for being a sort of a Putin stool pigeon and taking money.
Well, hasn't Farage said he admires Putin?
He has in the past, and Farage has also worked for Russia Today, taking money from a Russia state sort of sponsored media, and they've been very lukewarm to say the least. And of course they are allied very closely. I mean, you know, Nigel Farage is very, very close chums, isn't he? Also, as much as you can be a chum of Trump. And Trump has been you know, he's boasted, as his crew. Boasted of taking support away from Ukraine and not supporting Ukraine and being seen to be very pro-Putin. So this isn't a very good luck for Reform, because Zelensky, you know, during an interview that I think he did for Sky News, has warned that the decision by some Reform UK councils to take down the Ukrainian flag was a kind of a small mistake that can break a big friendship. And I think a lot of people who support Reform also support Ukraine. I mean, you drive, as I have driven around towns that sort of more Reform, you know, you often see Ukraine flags fluttering. So I'm not sure this stance by Reform, being lukewarm to say the least about Ukraine, is a big vote winner for them in the future.
Well, I mean, it's an act to remove flags, isn't it? It's a statement to remove those flags.
Yes.
As opposed to just leaving them there or not having them in the first
it is a
place.
statement, isn't it?
It's a statement.
It is a statement.
It is a statement.
If you take down a flag or you put up a flag, it is a statement.
It is a statement either way. Yeah.
And I think, you know, from talking to politicians in the Conservative Party as well, they see that as that as being a stick to beat Reform with and to beat Nigel Farage with. They're not seen to be. Yes, they do have a Russia problem, and I think they have a Ukraine problem, as much as they may deny it. And I think that also this sort of linkage with the Trump White House and their ambivalence, to say the least, towards Ukraine. One remembers that awful scene in the White House when J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and Donald Trump ganged up on Zelensky, who after all is now in the fifth year of this terrible, unprovoked assault from Russia, which they are now winning, incredibly.
I know.
And they've sort of turned the front line, Russia and Ukraine, onto sort of...
You just couldn't have written this any better. You know, a comedy actor who acted a president, enacted a comedian becoming a president, becomes a president, and now is a war president, and probably one of the greatest ever.
He's extraordinary. I mean, I mean, I've been to Ukraine quite a few times, and the most recently last year, and for a very brief trip to Kiev. I was delivering vans there, and it is a tragedy when you drive through Ukraine. And every single town and village you drive through, there are these banners showing all the fallen of Ukraine. The graveyards are full with people, thousands of people, flags everywhere showing that all these very brave young people have died for Ukraine. And yet there they are, still up against this big war machine, winning the war. And Zelensky, he's just a very, very cool customer, he seems to me. I mean, the guy he doesn't look haggard and worn.
I don't know how he does it.
He's extraordinary bloke. And he's incredibly, you know, Russia has had these terrible losses. I mean, they've had 1.5 million casualties, 1 million people, 1 million deaths as well. I mean,
compared
casualties
to about 40,000 in Ukraine.
Well, I don't know how many it is in Ukraine, but it's certainly a lot of people in Ukraine. I suspect more than that. But certainly an incalculable loss and horrible carnage there's been. But, you know, I know casualties, they tend to mix up injured and deaths, but there's been 1 million deaths alone as well, apparently, according to the recent figures. So, but it's interesting, and he's even invited the king. This article says he's inviting the king to Kiev, which is, it sounds nuts, but it is. Depending on the day you go, it's kind of feels kind of safe. You have to go there by you have to fly to Poland, then you have to get a train. And of course they changed the gauges because the Polish gauges are different from what was the Soviet Union gauges, because the Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union up until 1991. And so then you get on they're beautiful old Pullman trains that then take you to Kiev, which is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. I mean, once the war's over, I'd recommend anyone to go for a visit to Kiev, because it's absolutely gorgeous place. Cathedrals, wonderful squares, wonderful river, and all the rest of it. So the king may or may not be going. I mean, hopefully the war won't be over by the time he does go. I suspect the security services might have a word.
They're going to have a yeah. They're going to have something to say.
May not be. But of course, we've had prime ministers go over there quite safely and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting story, I think.
Interesting story. Yeah. The Metro has another interesting story. A lieutenant in the Kinahan gang jailed for a hit. Trusted confidant of sinister, dangerous organisation oversaw cruel and callous killing.
This is a court case, and the reason why I like this story is very, very interesting for me, because it's very we hear a lot about gangs, the big, powerful gangs in London. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen the Gangs of London or whatever it's called on Netflix. I saw bits. It was extremely violent and all the rest of it. So there is this underworld that we don't really get to see or hear very much about. And this particular case, and of course the Kinahan gang apparently are very powerful in sport, particularly boxing. And so there's been this war between the Kinahan gang and the Hutch gang. And this
I feel another Netflix drama coming.
Yes, well, this has ended up with 18 bodies turning up, right?
Wow.
In this horrible feud. And this particular court case is about Sean McGovern, who is a sort of a Kinahan gang member, planned a hit and carried out a hit on an innocent guy called Noel Kerwin, or Noel Duckegg Kerwin.
Of course,
you have to have something like that in a proper gangster name, and carrying out a failed hit, if you can have such a thing. Well, you can, on another person. And so he's been sent away for quite a long time. Now, Daniel Kinahan, who's the son of the founder of the gang, Christy Kinahan, is currently in Dubai jail facing extradition. So, but for me, he's been given this guy, Sean McGovern, who planned this hit on Kerwin, has been given 24 years in jail.
Wow.
But it's I don't know, it's just one of these fascinating
because it is
insight
that
into the gang.
Underworld that luckily we don't know much, we don't come in contact with it.
Yeah, but it's a truism of human nature.
Didn't you write a book on the mafia? You were writing.
No, I was planning to write a book on the Sicilian mafia, on the Calabrian mafia. Yeah. But anyway, that's another story.
Anyway, you found a horse's head in your bed.
I did a documentary on it for the BBC. But anyway, I was thinking about doing a book on it. But the Calabrian mafia is probably the most powerful.
Yeah, just don't go near it.
It's probably the most powerful mafia in the world. But these guys are pretty big, big fish. And it's just a fascinating insight into this world. And of course, unfortunately, given human nature, we're just fascinated with these horrible people.
Yeah, true.
With true crime and gangsters and all the rest of it. We can't get enough of it, can we?
No, because it's all over everything you watch.
Yeah, podcasts, the most famous.
It's true. It's really
particularly young people apparently are really into it.
Really?
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm into true
I think
crime.
a third of young Londoners, their favourite podcasts are true crime. Yeah. So I went back to the BBC for a bit to produce a true crime series, and they are fascinating, but they're really horrible people. But we're not totally interested in nicer people. I think that's the problem.
I was just saying the other day though that I can't watch anything where a dog dies, but I'll happily watch several murders happening. With human beings, but not if it's a dog.
I find it all quite disturbing, actually.
I know, I love true crime.
But dogs, yes. I mean, if dogs get caught in the way,
if dogs get caught in it, I'm just Yeah. I'm not happy with that. I'm not doing that. Yeah. Right, quick break. Andrew and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me in the studio is Andrew Hosken, author and journalist, former BBC senior correspondent to go through the papers. This is an interesting story, Andrew. The UK spying fears after secret camera found in Whitehall ceiling panel. It was a hidden camera, wasn't it, that caught Matt Hancock snogging. Do you remember that?
Oh,
the
yes,
COVID
yes, goodness
snog?
me, the COVID thing with
I
his...
never want to see that snog again.
With his aide, yes.
Yeah.
I would rather hope you wouldn't remind us, everyone, of that.
Yeah, I know. It's just so gross. But anyway, so secret cameras found in a Whitehall ceiling panel. I mean, how the heck do you do that?
It's quite easy, though, isn't it? I mean, you can, you can just get one of these sort of Ringo cameras and put it. But I don't know what. It depends where it was. I mean, was it in the gents, or was it in the ante-room, or was it in the cloakroom, or was it in the cabinet room?
Well, it was
in
the building that houses the Home Office and the Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government. Both departments were involved in China's controversial planning application for a new mega embassy. Although there is no suggestion that Beijing-linked actors are responsible.
Oh,
I think that is a suggestion.
I think if the Chinese had planted a camera, they wouldn't have found it.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere like Guinea-Bissau or somewhere that couldn't afford a really decent...
The secret camera was found behind an office ceiling panel.
It's not a particularly impressive piece of espionage, is it? If the cleaner sort of with a feather duster finds a secret camera.
Yeah, it's probably a massive, great big camera.
So I can't, and there's this sort of lovely journalistic throw to both departments were involved in China's controversial planning application for a new mega embassy.
Yeah, and saying there's no suggestion it was linked, except that they are making that very suggestion.
Well, there's no suggestion it was linked, and there's no evidence either. So
but they are suggesting
why mention it? Yeah. So it's sort of it's an interesting story to a point, Lord Copper, I would say. But as I say, it doesn't really tell you who put it there or where it was. An office ceiling panel.
Yeah, but that's where the Matt Hancock camera was as well.
No, I think it was in the lift.
No, it was inside his office. I remember it. He just closed the door and started snogging.
I mean, it might have been one of the internal, knowing the Home Office, it might have been one of theirs.
Yeah, true.
Maybe somebody filching the office station or something.
Hidden, wasn't it? It was an official camera, Matt Hancock's son, apparently.
Yeah, it was. That was all shrouded in mystery, wasn't it?
I wish that snog had been
how the CCTV ended up in the papers.
Yeah,
it was all quite a bit of a kind of mystery. A hit job, I suspect. It felt a bit like a political hit job.
Yeah.
But this is sort of interesting. I can't get totally worried about it, if I was honest, because as I said, if they were any good, if there was like a proper spy, you wouldn't find the camera.
No,
stuck behind
especially these days, and they're so tiny.
I mean, you can literally, you can get them on Amazon or eBay, tiny little cameras.
Yeah.
That you put in these light sockets. I mean, the old joke about sort of, staying in some of the countries I've stayed in, for room service, please speak loudly into the table lamp. There was a cartoon in Punch that said that, East Germany or somewhere like that.
Very good.
And it's a bit like that. So you can, you can hide cameras anywhere, in light sockets, in lamps, TV sets can be filming you everywhere else. So the idea they found was behind an office panel.
It doesn't sound very convincing.
It doesn't seem terribly James Bond to me, I must say.
No, perhaps not.
No, maybe not.
The Telegraph, billions in aid cash handed to terrorists. This is terrorist hostile states and gangsters have been given more than £28 billion of taxpayers' money, including through aid payments, according to secret... I love when they say a secret report that we're all reading about on the front page of the Telegraph. Not that secret, then.
There's nothing journalists love more than secret reports
and secret
or hidden
cameras.
No, they love it. They can't get enough of
it.
It's very interesting. This is because way down the story you find out this was actually buried by the Conservative government.
Oh, right.
It was buried during the previous government. So this is between 2015 and 2021, under which the country was being run by David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson. More than 28 billion pounds ended up in the hands of various people it shouldn't have ended up in. And it's not quite clear what these payments are. I've sort of read the story thoroughly. So there were grants given to COVID companies that were linked to the Russian state, COVID loans sent to Islamic State terrorists, I think in Syria, which is the current guy, Al-Jarrah, Al-Shah, sorry, the current guy running Syria was also the current guy at that time running ISIS, the Al-Qaeda branch, not of ISIS. So it doesn't really go into detail about how these. How all this money, £28 billion, seems an awful lot of money.
It really does.
It does seem quite a huge scandal if this is the case. I mean, it also, there's echoes, isn't there, of the misspending and misappropriation of monies, of COVID money as well, generally, as we know.
Billions
Lady
and billions
Moan and
Co. Who will never have to pay a penny
absolute
back.
Scandals. So a large proportion of the misappropriated funds went to gangs, including human traffickers, claiming housing benefits and disability allowances. So it's sources said they believe there was an overlap between some of the organised crime groups and hostile states. They said there'd been a concerted effort to obtain British public funds made by an organised crime network linked to Eastern Europe. So there's all kind of ISIS and Eastern European gangs and all this, but it's not entirely clear what these funds are. It's also
what they were paid for.
Yeah, there was a guy, Tom Keating of RUSI, the famous think tank, co-wrote a report on this issue back in 2021, which called the lack of attention given to fraud in the national security dialogue increasingly perverse. So there seems to be a systemic problem with various grants and monies being handed through COVID, through foreign grants,
they were just
to all the rest of it,
about,
also foreign aid. But it's interesting that, as they say, that it was covered up, or apparently allegedly buried by the previous government. So sources said it was never made. Sources claim, according to the Telegraph, that this report was never made public to save the government from political embarrassment. So, well, it's out now. The government's gone.
Yeah.
And all the rest of it. And
But it's just so unfair, isn't it, when our taxes go up all the time and we're covering all these debts that have been, or these things that have been paid wrongly. And there's a little nib at the bottom there, Andrew, that says taxpayer picks up bank's £36 billion debt bill. The Bank of England's decision to sell off UK debt has cost the taxpayer £36 billion in just 4 years. So everybody else makes the mistakes and we pay the bill. And that seems to be so unfair.
There's been a lot of terrible bad government in the last 20 years, which has cost us billions and billions and billions of pounds.
But they don't care because it's not their money.
It isn't their money, no. And, of course, they're not personally liable for the cock-ups. I mean, in local government, I wrote a book about this, that local government politicians were held personally liable for making terrible decisions deliberately. And they would sometimes, in half a dozen cases, were forced to pay the money back personally.
Good.
We don't have that requirement in national government, never have had. And so, therefore, these big financial cock-ups, can sort of... And, of course, we've only just found out about it. Why has it taken so long for these facts to come out? Why was it buried? Why was the last government, the last Conservative government, allowed to bury it? And why isn't there any... Why hasn't the Telegraph gone to them and asked them? Because there doesn't seem to be any sort of... We went to Boris Johnson and asked him what on earth had been going on, and there was no quote from Boris Johnson, who used to work for the Daily Telegraph. I wonder why. So there it is. It's lots of billions and billions of pounds of our money being squandered.
Yeah.
It's all ho-hum, never mind.
Yeah,
it could have gone on schools and hospitals, but it's gone to some terrorist in Syria instead.
Great. Fantastic.
Get over it.
Yeah, get over it. We're not going to do any more. Do you remember when, I think it was your... Anyway, one of your birthdays, we went to see Jaws.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do.
At Banbury Cinema.
Yeah.
And we went to see Jaws.
I know.
And I think I was underage to go and see it, but I went anyway with you and your friends.
Are we talking about the sharks turned up in the...
Yes.
Yes. Now, Jaws, yeah. It was a massive film in the 70s.
Amazing film.
And it was based on this book, which I read as a kid at the time, by Peter Benchley, who made millions out of Jaws.
You always had your nose in the book.
And regretted the huge reputational damage he did to the great white shark that suffered enormously. I mean, look, here we are, you know, the Daily Star, you got this beautiful big fish swimming sublimely through the Strait of Sicily, which is the stretch of water between... They are fish, actually. They're not mammals, no.
They're not mammals.
Ah, you see.
Okay.
Ah, you see. I got you there. Yeah, they are fish.
Whales, they are fish.
They are fish, yeah. And they're big, nasty-looking fish, although some people think they're beautiful. But it's quite sublime. This lovely fish big fish, and he's sublimely swimming through the Strait of Sicily, which is the stretch of water between Sicily and Tunisia, with his fishy friends, stripy fishy friends. He's not threatening to eat them or whatever. And the Daily Star says, "Wish you weren't here."
I know.
And he's not doing anyone.
Well,
there's only 20,000 of them left on the planet.
Well, then we need to protect them.
And we
Andrew,
do, yeah.
I'm glad you were here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and this is the Talk Back Hour. And I wanted to talk to you about this sort of new trend that has been going on to kind of destigmatise not having any friends. So this is all going on social media, things like Instagram and TikTok and things like that, where people are talking about the fact they haven't got any friends. And they're saying that I have no friends, and hundreds of thousands of people have been joining in with these posts and saying that they are the same, that they don't have any friends either. So it's kind of to try and destigmatise this life that a lot of people are living without friends. And just saying, somebody who's 26 posted living alone diaries, hundreds of thousands of views again on that. So lots of people now going, I don't have friends, I live on my own, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that. So it just got me thinking really about the different stages you go through in your life where friends may slip away and they may not come back. As I was saying to my brother just then, or before he was in, I think, no, I was saying to my brother, when you have kids, it's one of those times where people tend to melt into the background as you sort of, concentrate more on your family than you do on friendships, and you just hope that they come back. People have divorces, and then in the divorce they don't get many of the friends, or they decide not to keep any of the friends because it's just too awkward. Illness often can lead to the dissolving of friendships as well. But I'd just like to know from you, how important is it to have a friendship group? Maybe you've just got one really good friend, and that's all you need. It's all I needed as a kid. I mean, I did have friends at school, but my one best friend is still my friend today, and we're still as stupid as we were when we were about 8 or 9 years old when we met. We still have the same stupid sense of humour. We still have the same stupid language. We still laugh at the same stupid things, and that has lasted for decades. So it's interesting. Whereas other people I've been really close to, really good friends with, and they're not in my life anymore for whatever reason. You think, how did that happen? How could I have been that close to that person at that time and just never hear from them again or never speak to them again? And some of it is because of fallouts, other things are for other reasons, and they just slip away, and you wonder where that friendship went that was so important. So I just wanted to talk to you about this, about the different stages you've perhaps gone through in your life and the friendships that you've had and the friendships that you've lost. And maybe you are finding it difficult to make new friends, or do you not even want new friends? And what's going on with people who are quite happy without mates, quite happy just to live their lives in peace and quiet? Maybe that's the solution. I don't know. You tell me. This is your chance to talk back. I just thought it was a really interesting topic to look at, where people feel or have up until recently felt ashamed of not having friends for whatever reason. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to call. You can also leave a voice note on that number as well. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. So do get in touch and tell me about what's happened with your friendship group over the years. Steve is in Swansea. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Petrie. Hi.
Hi. So tell me your story.
So 6 years ago, I had leukemia, and I had quite an aggressive form. 3 months after I got the leukemia, I came down with 4 things, which were sepsis, pneumonia, liver and kidney failure.
Good God.
All at the same time.
Wowzer.
And it was sort of, he's had it. He's got 4 things, any one of which could kill a healthy person, plus he's got the leukemia. And I was induced in a coma. But do you know what? It's almost as if I actually did die, because friends just fell away.
Really?
Yeah. Whereas before that, I was getting visits, not often, because I was in quite a faraway hospital, but I was getting visits and all that. And after that, it just fizzled out.
And were these long-standing friends?
Yeah, really long-standing. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you put that down to?
I honestly don't know. I don't know if they found it difficult to sort of, with the prognosis being bad, whether that was a factor. I don't know.
Well, they felt awkward.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I can't. Not one of them has ever come back to me, so I've not had a chance to sort of go, well, what happened? But
wow, that's That's quite something, isn't it? Because that is not something you've done to yourself. That's not deliberate. You were very, very poorly, and they just melted away.
yeah. I think, like, sometimes it makes me laugh because I've got 4 kids, and they're all brilliant. But my oldest, he's 18, and he's got Facebook, and he's like, I've got 5,000 friends. And I'm like,
No, you haven't.
come on, how many are friends? How many are friends?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? That friends, friends are supposed to stick with you. Would you want them to come back?
Exactly. No, I'm quite happy now. I've got colleagues. I can't say I haven't got any friends, because obviously I've got people that I'm friendly with.
Yeah.
But they are. Since that happened to me, I've learned a great saying, and that's fair weather friends.
Yeah.
It literally, to go through that, and as you say, have people just disappear.
Just abandon you at your time of need. I mean, that is not friendship, is it?
No.
And you'd known these people for quite some time.
Years and years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And you thought they were your right or die, that they were your 3 o'clock in the morning phone. That's what I always refer to, my 3 o'clock in the morning calls. If you needed somebody at 3 a.m., would you have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. I mean,
But it'd be really interesting to talk to them, wouldn't it? To find out.
It would. Because my childhood friend, my best friend from childhood, he died of stomach cancer when we were 23.
Oh, God. Awful.
But I did not, till the last day I was there. There was no way.
No, I was like that with my friend that died of cancer as well. I was there every day.
Horrible, isn't it?
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
But you'd be there just because they needed you, right?
But I don't want to be all doom and gloom. It might happen that somebody comes into my life and I value their friendship, but at the moment, no.
Would you find it difficult to trust now?
That is a big thing.
Because I would. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be a very, very gradual.
Yeah, you'd have to. I mean, and the fact, and did all of them know each other? Do you think it was a collective moving away, or was it just one at a time, or?
It was it was more one at a time.
Yeah.
There was ones that were there, but after that incident, after that 3-month mark, there was nobody.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cruel, isn't it? That is a really... to consciously do that to somebody who's in the situation that you were in, I think you're better off without them. They sound horrible.
I think so.
They sound awful.
I try to see their side of it, and I think,
What is their side of it? It was a bit difficult and you weren't much fun. Well, great. You were dying.
Yeah, but possibly they did think, he's gone. And then when he wasn't gone, oh my God, how do I go back and say, I'm sorry?
True. Yeah, that's true. That is possible. Do you think it's important, when you've got a friend, that they know things about you? Like my oldest friend, Claire, from when I was 8 or 9 years old, there's nothing she doesn't know about me, nothing, and knew me as a child, right? Which is, I think, quite significant. That there's a language that we speak that we don't need to fill in the gaps. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that the sort of friendship that you lost and that you miss now, or or you miss that
Absolutely.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the friend who died with me of cancer,
Yeah.
like his mum, if she wanted to clip me around the ear, she'd clip me around the ear. You know,
Yeah.
she was like my mum.
Yeah.
It was that kind of friend. And that's rare, where you get,
That really is rare.
yeah, you're sort of accepted as part of his family, and he was accepted as part of my family. That kind of friend.
Yeah.
That's rare. Yeah.
That is
and I'd
rare.
imagine that's much like your friend. Yeah. Yeah.
And you'd still, you know, for absolutely no question that he wouldn't have abandoned you.
Oh, no chance. No.
That is sad to lose a friend like that so young as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So young.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I get it, Steve, that I would be really hesitant to trust people now.
And this is a great segment. I mean, hats off to you.
Oh, thank you.
It resonated so strong.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question these days. That you know, the people feel ashamed of not having friends, but it's not. That's not something to be ashamed of, and it is something we need to talk about.
Yeah, and I think the Facebook thing is a big part of it. You know, where they're friends, but they're not really.
They're not friends. No. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I would also hate to have 5,000 friends. I mean, I don't know what I'd do with myself if I had to look after 5,000 people. But yeah, I mean, but you're busy with your kids, aren't you now? You've got the 4 kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And their mates
absolutely.
coming round all the time.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, always.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 dogs who are the best friends you could ever have.
Then I've got 2 dogs. I don't want anything else. That's it. That's it for me. What are your dogs? What are they?
They're Belgian Malinois.
Oh, they're so clever.
Amazing.
I love them. I see lots of TikTok videos of them doing all the amazing things. Can yours do that? Or yours rubbish?
No, my son has them. Like, he'll stand with his legs apart and he'll say tween, and they'll pop up between his legs.
That's amazing. I love them.
Yeah.
Because they look like Alsatians a bit, don't they?
They do, yeah. But they don't have the hip dysplasia. They're more upright with the hips, yeah.
And they're cleverer.
Oh, God. Too clever.
Oh, my God. Well, I've got idiots for dogs. So at least you've got clever dogs. What are they called?
Axel and Nina.
Ashley and Nina.
Axel and Nina.
Axel and Nina.
Yeah.
Very grown-up names for dogs. That's good. I like that. Liz and Steve, you sound wonderful, and you know, I hope that you, if you want it, you find somebody that you can be really close to again. But you know, don't rush it. Just don't. But you know, take your time. I'm always here if you want to chat. Anyway.
Yeah, we've got talkTV. That's a great friend.
That's a great friend. I'll always be here. Don't you worry about that. Unless the boss
Thank you,
sucks. You take care, Steve. Wonderful to talk to you. Isn't that interesting though? That just because you're ill, people disappear. What's that about? Crazy. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to take a quick break here, but I will be back in just a moment to talk to Callie.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about friendships and how important or not they are to you. And this is off the back of a story about just ahead of Loneliness Awareness Week, which begins next week, next Monday. Actually, we might do something on that next week, but this is specifically about friends and talking about being open to the fact that some people don't have friends. In fact, it seems to be much more common than we think. We always imagine that everybody's got this fantastic friendship group, that everybody's, you know, hanging out with each other. But as you get older, it gets more and more difficult to make friends. And how do you do that? And where do you find them? And who do you trust? And do you even have the time to dedicate to a friendship? But this is a new trend on social media that opens up to "I have no friends," and hundreds of thousands of people are acknowledging these messages and going, "I thought I was alone. I thought it was just me." But this is very, very common now that people don't have the friends that we imagined that they would have. And of course, with things like Facebook and stuff like that, you know, you say, "I've got thousands of friends." No, you haven't got thousands of friends. I mean, that's just not possible. And I'm always a bit suspicious of people who say they've got loads and loads of friends, because, I mean, who needs loads and loads of friends? You just don't need them. I haven't got time for them anyway. But I'm always suspicious, because friends, to me, to get the title friend, you've got to be quite significant in my life. You've got to, you know, you've got to be somebody that I trust 100%. You've got to be somebody who I can rely on and can rely on me. It's a big title to give somebody, and a lot of people, we have a lot of acquaintances or work colleagues or things like that. But it's friend is quite specific to me anyway, and is very, very important. So how many friends do you have? How many do you need? How many do you want? Did you have a big circle of friends and then you all lost touch, maybe through marriages and babies? Maybe you lost friends in a divorce, or like Steve, through ill health. So what's happened to you in terms of friendships? And do you feel any sense of shame, which you shouldn't have, if you don't really have friends? If you have acquaintances but you don't have friends, maybe you're quite happy with that. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. This one's come through, it's not signed, but it said, "I had a very good friend for almost 50 years who stopped talking to me because she was appalled that I'd been to a Reform Party rally. So apparently our close friendship was worth nothing. Amazing, since we considered each other to be best friends." Wow. Callie is in Devon. Good morning, Callie.
Hi there. Hi, Petrie.
So tell me about friends and friendship groups.
Right, okay, well, yeah, what you were just saying, actually, just made me think then, because, like you said, I was thinking, you got to define it, because a lot of people say friend, and it's like, what do they mean? How do you define friend? Because I know how I would define it, right? And I'd go along the lines of, if I was to say someone was my friend, what I mean by a friend is someone that, if you had a problem, and I'm not talking about every night, but like, say, do you know what I mean? And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, someone you could actually pick up the phone to at 3 o'clock in the morning. How many people in your life, if you really had a problem, do you think you could do that with? And that's what what in the old-fashioned term, I would think of as a friend. It'd be someone who would not, they might be a bit pissed off, but they wouldn't, it would be something that you could do, if you really had to. And, if you had, they might help you out in terms of, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning, you desperately needed some help, and they would be there. You know, this kind of thing that almost like that's very rare, right?
It is very rare. It is very. I can count on one hand.
Yeah.
A number of people that, but probably all the fingers. But those would be my calls that I could make.
Yeah. So when I'm saying front, but the whole thing, and the whole thing has been massively on, because what you're saying about the people online that are doing this, whatever they're doing on Twitter or whatever, they're saying they haven't got friends. I've had these conversations online because I've had a whole life really of social isolation and exclusion, and in the end I wrote a sort of book about it, but I turned it into a podcast called I Only See Strangers, and it's on YouTube and on Substack, and under my name, Callie Starforth, and it goes into I specifically made it, it's like a memoir, but it's around the subject of the long-term effects of social isolation and exclusion. And as in, so I call loneliness, because loneliness and isolation, like you said, are two different things, right? They can go together, but they're not necessarily exactly the same thing.
I agree.
Yeah, so I was isolated and excluded, but I'm a loner, you know, so I actually need a lot of space, right? But at the same time, sometimes there would be an element of loneliness because I spent nearly all my time alone in my own head, right? And but I am naturally kind of that way as well. So it's easy for me to retreat into that. It's very easy for me to retreat into that. And for me to reach out, part of it is the relating. It's very complex because I'm thinking, but part of it is how do you relate to people, right? Because I always find that when I try and talk to people, there's very few people I can relate to because most people they want to, I don't know, let's say women, for example. Often women quite often they want to, I don't have kids, right, but they might want to talk about kids. A lot of women want to talk about kids, but also like other things that, for me, I tend to want to go deeper. Perhaps I veer towards maybe male conversation, but then a lot of men, they want to talk about things that are surface, football, things like this. I tend to go deeper, and I often find that I can't find people. People don't want to go deep. They really don't. They sort of like, and I can't find people I relate to. So all my life I've had this, where do I find the people I can relate to? Yeah, and it's really, really difficult. I mean, I have found the odd soulmate here and there. My life trajectory took me on this, I mean, without going into it, because it's so long and complex. But I did do this podcast, I Only See Strangers. I've done drawings with it and everything, and it goes into, what I'm trying to show is the long-term effects, because I don't buy, for me, I can only talk for me, but being on my own all the time, being in my own head, answering all my own questions, the eternal feedback loop, that doesn't end prettily, and it didn't end prettily for me. And you can't. Man is not an island, right? Man is not an island. We're supposedly social animals, right? And in the past, we wouldn't have survived. If you were outed from the tribe, you would have really died, okay? But nowadays, we have a welfare state. We have all sorts of things which help us survive. And a lot of these people I see, young people, and I've had these conversations with young people, and they're, no, I love being alone. I hate other human beings. I really hate them. I love it. And I'm thinking, and I'm trying to say, yeah, I know what you're saying, but you're reaching out online. Why are you reaching out online? Why do you feel the need to reach out online? If you so love your isolation, why are you reaching out online? They're reaching out online because they're desperate for connection. Right?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, isn't it, though, that a lot of the social media has exaggerated friendship numbers, exaggerated friendships, and made it seem like it's really, really easy, right? And actually, friendships aren't easy. There is give and take. There is staying in touch. There is, being aware of the other person. And I mean, I am unbelievably socially awkward, which is, people don't believe me. I know, nobody believes it.
Well, it's only because you do, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I am unbelievably socially awkward. I mean, one of my best mates just hates it when he has to go to a party with me or something, because I'm so... He just said, I can't bear it. I cannot bear being with you in company because you're horrible. You're awful. Because I just sort of retreat into myself.
It's about friendship. shit because he's able to say to you, you're horrible, and that's what you need. That's a real.
Oh yeah, no, he's a real. I mean, he also tells me I'm fat and ugly, so he's a real friend. No, he is, but I love him dearly. But yeah, I mean, we do have that sort of honest relationship with each other, and it's so difficult when you look at the way social media makes people look, like everybody's having a great time. I remember when I was a young mum, when my son was little, and looking on Facebook, and everybody seemed to be having a wonderful time. I was a single mum, wonderful time with hubby, and da-da-da-da-da. And actually it turned out they were all much more miserable than I was, frankly. But it's also fake, and people feel that they're missing out on something. Right?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you're missing out?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about my past, right? I mean, I do now, right? I really make that effort to reach out, and I have got people in my life now. How many? What would I call friends? I mean, I've got a couple of people who I could call friends, right? But I'd say, how many friends can you really have? And I really make that real effort now, only because I know that without that connection, it's not, you go on this feedback loop where you're constantly answering your own questions, you're constantly having this discussion in your head, and you're just going on forever, or just talk, and you're not actually getting that sort of the interaction that you need to for balance. I mean, like you dogs, I mean, I'm dog mad, and I had dogs, and I thought, great, dogs are fantastic. Animals are. They are a substitute to some extent, right? Animals, wildlife. But I still maintain man is a social animal. You do need your own kind. You do. I mean, you can talk to your dog. And Bridget Bardot did it, didn't she? She shut herself away with all her animals, didn't she, for years and years?
She did, yeah.
And I don't blame her. But, I mean, like, there is that element of, how many... I mean, I had lots of conversations with my dogs. And I've got to say that they do answer back, but how deep, intelligent, if you need some kind of intelligent conversation, you might want to discuss a subject. Maybe you're interested in, I don't know, quantum theory or, electrical engineering, right? And you want to discuss that. I'm interested in all sorts of different subjects. I mean, I can't...
Has social media helped or hindered with that? Because it is easy to find your people if you want conversation online as opposed to a friendship. Have you found that social media helped or hindered?
Well, I went on Facebook for a little while and came off it because it drove me absolutely insane, and I found it was interfering with my sleep, and I would get this, and it was like, I just found a lot of this banal stuff that came up. I just couldn't stand it. But having said that, I do quite often get in conversations on Substack or on YouTube right now. But do you know what's frustrating about it? Is this endless... You're in endless conversations with people with a handle. You don't even know who they are.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, they may not even be real sometimes. I mean, okay, sometimes they are, but it's typing it out. It's not the same as being in a room with someone, or being in a pub with someone, or being in a cafe with someone and having that actual quality time. And I'm sorry, I don't think anything can beat that with if you get that connection with someone where you need the smell. We go on smell a lot, We go on smell, and that's one thing you don't get online. And also body language is 70% of communication.
Communication, absolutely. Yeah, it's very important, isn't it? And which is why I like visual phone calls now, the sort of, FaceTiming people if you can't get to see them, because it is so much a better communication if you're looking at somebody.
It's a slight delay, though, is a sort of problem as well with the video calls, because it's not quite exactly, and that kind of mucks up the body language a bit. But you've got the tone of voice on a phone call, which is good, because you don't get that in a text. So
yeah, at least that.
Yeah,
so even though you've had a lifetime of social exclusion, what do you put that down to?
Well, I mean, it is you can say it's very complicated, but I had mental health problems, severe drug problems, mental health problems, all those kind of things. Okay, a lot of traits which you could say, well, I hate these boxes, and I'm not going to put it in, but, you know, the autistic female kind of trait. I'm also gay. Back in those days, not that gay these days would make any difference, but I suppose it still would to some extent. But all those things added up to me more. I mean, drug addiction isolates you.
Absolutely.
You know, and then the mental health problems. I had multiple episodes of psychosis. People don't understand. They back off. But I'm a loner anyway, so I was withdrawing. Yeah, all that happened. That's all a long time in my past. But even when I started to sort of recover, I suppose, into recovery, never say never, is that I was shutting myself away, still not finding relationships really
Was it just
difficult.
easier at some point just to withdraw?
It is easy, and that's what this is when, I mean, I don't want to latch young people because it's there, you know, you can't, can you? But it is easier. It's a lot easier. It's, you know, it's safer.
You don't get hurt, do you? If you're,
no. It's dangerous. You know, relationships are dangerous.
They are. If you open yourself up to anybody, then it can be dangerous. Of course, that's part of it.
And my podcast is set at actually I set it at an inquest of mine because I met a woman and we got into a relationship eventually, and I mean I didn't meet her till I was in my, what am I now? I mean, I hate even to mention my age, but in my 40s. And I'm well over that now, probably 20 years over that. But yeah, I mean, and we met in actually a hospital. We met in a forensic hospital, and she unfortunately she killed herself in the hospital. And I set my podcast at the inquest into her death, and I'm looking back on my life, so it's got bits of flashbacks into, you know, and all around as much as can around that whole subject of isolation, exclusion. But I set it at the week-long inquest into her death and into her suicide, and then I sort of, and weirdly enough, when I started doing the podcast, I wrote it as a book first, but then I put it in a podcast, was a memoir. It was just before the whole COVID lockdown thing happened.
Oh, wow.
And if you remember, prior to that, right, there was, it used to really frustrate me. Whenever I used to see anything about isolation, loneliness, exclusion, all these sort of things in the papers or anywhere else, it was always around elderly people. Oh, elderly people are isolated, elderly people are excluded. And I kept thinking, it's not just elderly people.
No,
yes,
it's not. In fact, it's majority younger people now.
Yeah, but no one talked about it back then.
No.
And then suddenly the whole COVID thing, the socialisation, and I thought, well, this is my normal, so it didn't bother me at all, lockdown, because it was normal for me. I was like, oh, God, this is my normal, but anyway, But then suddenly everyone was talking about it after that, and I thought, oh, damn it, I timed my podcast at the wrong time because I should have done it before when I was the only one talking about it, and of course now everybody's talking about it. Yeah, but anyway.
But I think it's a fascinating topic about how, like you said, exclusion and isolation, and that doesn't necessarily mean loneliness, but not having friends is somehow seen as the final taboo, and you know, not talking about it because it's embarrassing and all of that. But Callie, brilliant call. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I've got to take a quick break, but I'll be back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And we're talking about friendships. And it's been really interesting so far, how much you've opened up to me about this. I really appreciate it, by the way. I always do. But it's such an interesting thing, friendship, because friendships do change through the years, and even your grouping of friends changes, doesn't it, as people come and go. And sometimes they all disappear. Just got this message here from Carol. I should hope you and the furry kids are okay. They're great, thank you. Got to agree with your first caller, Steve, from Swansea. Since I was diagnosed with lung cancer, I found that a lot of people who I thought were close friends have distanced themselves from me. You really soon learn who your real friends are. In fact, sometimes you're surprised by the ones that have stepped up and been there for me. Please give Steve my number, oh bless, if he wants it, because Swansea is only an hour away from where I live. I'm always up for a chat. Oh, Carol, you're a sweetheart. This is Gary and Polly. Says, hi, we have 3 couples who are life friends. Wherever we are, we will be friends. We've just moved to France, and there's an amazing expat community here of all ages that have quickly become friends, really, because we've all got fed up with the UK and now want a simple life with wine. That sounds perfect. Can I join? I'll move over. I just want a simple life with wine. That's all I've ever asked for. Let's go back to your calls now. And Patrick's in Birmingham. Hello, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Not too bad. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was going to say a few things, but I was just listening to what Carrie was saying, or Carrie?
Callie.
Carrie, your last caller.
Yeah, Callie, yeah.
And, yeah, it just got me thinking. I could understand where she was coming from, down to her mental health and recovery and things like that. And I'll get round to that one. But when it comes to, if I get back to what I was thinking, it's like, you know, I had good friends when I was young, whatever. You know, I come from a council estate, and I can say them friends are still in my life, luckily enough. But you learn to know, and life's a learning curve sort of thing. So it's one of them, and you learn along the way who your friend. It's just life, and you learn to know who your friends are and the way, like you say, the way they're acting, and you see their true colours and things like that.
Yeah, they expose themselves, don't they, through the journey as to whether they're real friends or not. Yeah. But I do think there's a lot of pressure on people to have all these mates and friends, and, you know, everybody thinks on social media that everybody's living these wonderful lives.
Yeah, but, just as you say, but down to social media, and I feel a shame on the job. Like I say, I'm 51. I feel ashamed of the young ones, because the thing through social media, it's like, I know a lot of people, but I class all of them mostly, well, I'll say all of them as acquaintances. As I was saying, since I was a child, you learn to work it out for yourself.
Yeah.
But down to these ones on social media, or the young ones, they think they got all these followers and people, and they class them as friends, whatever. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, it's you work out who your true friends are. And like I was saying to your lady who was speaking to on the phone earlier, and then what Dad taught me in Passport, at the end of the day, you'll be lucky if you can count 4 or 5 people on your hand, and you're very lucky, like your woman says.
I agree with that. I do agree with that, Patrick, because I think that you know, friends come and go and all of that thing. And I can't believe some people that I was so close with, you know, really strong friendships just disappear. They just go, and you just think, how did that happen? And yet I've got other people who've been in my life for, you know, 50-odd years and aren't going anywhere and won't go anywhere. But it's just these friends that I get perplexed by, that you're so close. I was really close to one guy for 15, 20 years and just disappeared. It's kind of like, oh, what was that about then? You know, what was that friendship about? So it's a very strange thing, friendship. And like you said, you do learn who your people are eventually. So I don't think we need that many.
No, you don't, because it's like you say, as you get older as well, all right then, when you're young again, you like to know people, get out, socialise and things like that. This is where the young ones are going wrong as well with social media.
Yeah, I agree.
Feel for them. But at the same time, as you get older, you say, all right, most of our friends have got families, and so that, like you were talking earlier, and they've got other things to be concentrating on, and sometimes they're still there if you give them a ring, oh, how you doing, but it's a quick thing, and they're still your friends sort of thing, but they've got their own life to deal with now. We're not young no more, but at the same time, as well for myself, as I've got older, I learned the hard way, in a way, sort of thing, and I learned that, well, it probably done me a favour, learning who my true friends were and who wasn't, and it is like people very close to me, even family, and they say blood thicker than water. Sometimes I think it ain't, and friendship, and being there for one another is, that's the way I think. But where was I going with this?
Yeah, I mean, even family, I think you've got to allow some people to leave your life, right?
Yeah. Well, you're talking like, well, when it comes to your brothers and whatever, they're on one person's side and their own blood, and it's not good, you know.
No.
It's just all right.
But blood can be damaging as much as any friendship can be. So you've got to be prepared to let people like that go out of your life.
Yeah, and then you got the jealousy and all them aspects to come out. People, like I know a lot of friends have done very well in their lives. And probably know a few of them for being in it, but I'm not going to go there. But at the same time, I love them more for what they've become. You know what I mean? And there's no ill feeling or whatever, but you get a lot of people, if people to see people do good and they just change, they don't like it, and then is it all right? It's their loss, but again, after you learn what true friendship is, but anyway, apart from that, it's like I say, I'm into volunteering and things like that now. So because like I say, I'm in recovery. So I like to volunteer and try and help people if I can.
That's nice. That is a brilliant thing to do, and you meet like-minded people when you're doing it. Surely.
But after things. But again, I'll say this. You was on about ChatGPT earlier. I'll say to my missus, and I'm like, can you tell me what you're doing? She'd rather talk to ChatGPT, and it tells her all about why she's on the panic attack, or she's on the bad day, or hates to do the living room and things like that. And she's listening to AI and like having a normal conversation with a normal person. And I'm like, listen, you've got to get out, either go to church or.
Oh wow, that's worrying, isn't it? Though.
Yeah, but this is the way it's going. So if you think, and like she's like 48. And if she's doing that, what's these young ones doing? Like you were saying, they're like running home from school, to get onto these.
Yeah. It's a huge number of young people who'd rather talk to ChatGPT than actually a real human being.
Yeah, so that's not helping. And then this is where the mental health comes into them, because they are all like what's it called when you're doing social, antisocial. Because really they haven't got no friends because they haven't socialised. It's not their fault. It is down to parenting as well. And this is why, if the government goes, which should have been done years ago, as you've been going on about all day, not you, but it's been talked about all day. It should have been banned years ago.
I completely agree. And like you said, parenting has a lot to do with it as well, because parents are afraid to let their kids go out and play. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, that was incredibly important. Bonding, being naughty together, doing, questionable things. All of that was incredibly important part of learning how to socialise and trust people and all of those things, which young people don't get.
Yeah, that's right. It's what I was saying, or I was brought up from a council estate. But in the morning, as soon as the crack of dawn, whatever, I'll be kicked out of the house. There you go. You don't come back until the lamppost.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that was exactly. I was brought up in a village, and that was the same thing. We were kicked out, and the lamppost was our alarm to come home when the lights came on.
Yeah, well, that's all right. And nowadays, all right, it's like that back in our days. There's still dodgy people about. All right,
yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, we got up to the most outrageous. We honestly, the fact that any of us survived is a miracle, but it's incredibly important part of learning how to socialise, right? Learning trust, learning friendships, learning your mates, getting on a bike, going for a bike ride, all of those things. And young people are just not being brought up with that sort of friendship anymore.
And that's right. And as you're saying, back down to the trust issue, because of that reason, you know, nobody trusts nobody.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? I wonder if we you know, those friendships that we grew up with that taught us how to be friends and, you know, all of those things, it's going to make such a difference to the future for young people if 1 in 4 of them already prefer talking to an AI than a real person.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame where we're heading to.
I agree, and I think it should have been. I think you're absolutely right. We're too late in closing this door. We really are. Patrick, brilliant call. Thank you. Hey, listen, I need to tell you about the FIFA World Cup tickets, because it kicks off this Thursday, and our friends at talkSPORT are sending you and a mate straight to New York with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of. Plus, Adidas is throwing in an official Triander match ball and a fresh, thank goodness, pair of boots. So don't miss out. Here's how to enter.
For a chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until the top of the hour, and we're talking about friendships. And Dan from Leicestershire sent this message. My father had a very good friend who one day disappeared to America, had a couple of posts on social media and then disappeared completely. He tried looking for him, but he couldn't be found. And he said, amazing show, thank you. And then just one message here saying, I'm so alone, with a sad face. You're not alone. You've always got me on this show, always. So please just pick up the phone sometime if you want to chat. And Gary said, if you haven't seen it, watch Russell T Davies' new drama, Tiptoe. Do you know what, Gary? So many people have recommended that I should watch that. And I do love Russell T Davies' work. So Gary's a mate now. See, he's just a mate, just having a chat with me. So you can do the same, Mr. who said, I'm so alone. Please, don't be alone. Right, to your calls now. And Grace is here in London. Hello, Grace.
Hi.
Hi, so tell me about loneliness or not having friends. What happened?
Well, it was made quite clear to me when I was in primary school that I'm really irritating, particularly my voice, so apologies about that. People would always mock my voice in primary school. So by the time I got to high school, I thought I would just keep my head down and try to avoid...
What's wrong with your voice?
It's annoying. I sound weird, and I think I sound more posh than I actually am.
You don't sound weird at all.
Which
Go
is...
on, then.
I think it's partly due to my Asperger's, although I shouldn't blame that for everything. But I remember reading an article, and someone else who had Asperger's had the same issue. But I think that I thought it was easier in high school just to avoid being mocked again, so I didn't try to make friends particularly, although there were a few people who were quite nice to me, and I found that as I went through the years of high school and people became more mature, it was easier to talk to people a bit, but I didn't ever really kind of get into meeting up with people outside of school in the way that I think most kids do, and I just kind of continued in that vein, not really socialising particularly, but I have all along had church. You know, my parents were taking me when I was a kid, and I was thinking, I'm not quite sure if I believe any of this, and then I realised later on that there was reasoning that led me to believe in it, but all the way along, whatever it was that I was believing, being at church was a place where there were friendly people, and so it was just nice to have people there who weren't mean to me, like people
judging
at school,
you,
people who were welcoming, and I felt I could just kind of run around the church hall and not feel awkward or inhibited in the way that I did at school, and I really appreciated that. And now there are, people at church who've known me for years, and I don't kind of hang out with people in the way that normal people would go for a coffee or whatever. I don't tend to do that, but it's nice to see those people on Sunday and know that there are people who are kind and supportive, and it is a place that one could make friends if one was looking to make friends.
Absolutely. But do you miss it? It's something you've not really had, but do you think you've missed out by not having those close friendships?
I've not tended to give it much thought. I'm more just furious with myself for failing so horribly and trying to get into work and finding that's... I've finally got a one-day-a-week contract, which I'm thrilled about.
Well done. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, but I desperately need more work. So all of my thoughts are just I'm failing at life by not getting more work. I'm not kind of thinking about the things I might be enjoying if I were normal. And having friends is just not really something I've contemplated too much. I remember one occasion when I was in high school at an event that was going on in the evening. For some reason, I can't remember why, but there were lots of students and parents there, and I remember seeing a big group of students from my year group hanging out with each other and chatting, and I just knew that I couldn't go over and talk to them because they might be irritated by me, and I just remember feeling this deep sadness, but